Greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, Robert Meyer Burnett. I invite you to watch and listen to the Designing Hollywood podcast, brought to you by Martika Ibarra and the great, legendary Hollywood costume designer, Marilyn Vance. I am afforded the wonderful opportunity of co-hosting the show. If you are interested in the magic of Hollywood, the design of Hollywood, the clothes of Hollywood, watch the Designing Hollywood podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts from, or find the video version on YouTube. That's right, the Designing Hollywood podcast. Why would you ever want to miss it, especially if you love the movies?
There's a company called Hot Toys, and they make these insanely realistic, renderings of characters. They do them for all the Marvel characters or whatever, and they look so much like you. It's disturbing, actually. Like, scary. They look so much like you, but they're tiny. They're like 18 inches or something like that. They actually that's what's crazy about that company is they hand make the, like they carve the mold. The mold of, thank you, of the.
That's crazy.
It's wild.
Robservations with Robert Meyer Burnett.
Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, whatever else you want to call me, good or bad, indifferent, whatever. I'm Robert Meyer Burnett. It's Midnight Musings, episode 21. And this is, in fact, our 21st episode. I mean, I said 21. It's. I mean, what does that mean? If it was blackjack, I'd win. I'd win some kind of an award. Well, as you know, I have two compatriots to do the show with me, and Lael Rockwell. Lael's going to join us later because he's at a wedding, and will join me momentarily. I believe that is ready to go, and you know her, you love her. She's.
Hi.
How are you?
I am doing well, Robert. It is always great to be with you on midnight on the weekend, talking about entertainment and all the things we love. Robert, how are you?
I'm well. You know, a lot of stuff going on. As I mentioned before, Gabe Bologna, the director of Tango Shalom. We are working on a new film, sort of resurrecting a film that he had worked on before, that called The White Devils. That I can't talk much about it yet, but we're almost finished with it. I'm a producer on it, and Gabe directed it, so that's pretty exciting. And then, of course, Dota Dragon's Blood Book 3 is on Netflix, which you can see. That was so far, I think it'll probably be the 3 seasons. They were only contracted to make 3 seasons. Who knows if there'll be a 4th? I don't think so, but you never know. And so that you can watch that. You can watch all 24 episodes of Dota Dragon's Blood that I was the animatic editor on, and that is on Netflix now. So, you know, it's nice to have product, stuff that people can see. So that's always exciting.
Robert, that is so exciting. I remember my mother is having nightmares. So hold on 1 second.
Go. If you want, I'll go tend to her, and I'll keep talking. I will. Yes, they're on a trip together. I've met R'm's mother, and she is a lovely, lovely woman, and I love her to death. But yes, there, of course, obviously, it's past the midnight hour with them. So anyway, we're going to talk a little bit when we start. We're going to talk a little She-Hulk tonight, and it's been interesting because as anyone who's watched our pre or post She-Hulk shows on the John Campy channel, we all over on the John Campy show, I really liked She-Hulk a lot, and I thought that it was I really enjoyed She-Hulk, and then of course a a secret, call it a secret, a bonus. There's an article in the Hollywood Reporter I was reading earlier, maybe Hollywood Reporter or Variety, about an 11th episode of Sandman. And they knew they were going to do this. And, of course, the 11th episode of Sandman is 2 issues. It's Dream of a Thousand Cats and Calliope. Now, that is the beginning of the 3rd Sandman book or story or whatever. So you had Preludes and Nocturnes was the first Sandman arc. Then A Doll's House was the 2nd Sandman arc. And then the Dream Country, which is comprised of 4 stories, Calliope, Dream of a Thousand Cats, A Midsummer Night's Dream, and Facade. Now, I don't know if they're going to do Facade. It wouldn't surprise me if they don't do Facade, because that character, or they might. I mean, Element Girl was definitely like a female metamorpho, and I couldn't believe it. I mean, I had tweeted to Neil Gaiman, I don't know, like a year ago about Dream of a Thousand Cats. I'm like, are you going to do it with animatronics? Are you going to do it CG? How are you going to do this? Are you even going to do it at all? And he gave me some cryptic, cheeky response. And I have to tell you, I that was the only comic book I ever gave my mom to read, was The Dream of a Thousand Cats. And I couldn't believe, watching that was... It was incredible. Like I couldn't believe it. And they used oil paintings in the animation style, and I think it was pretty smart. So they didn't have to use whatchamacallit. They didn't have to use they didn't make the mouths move. So I was talking about, have you watched, did you watch the Sandman episode that dropped, episode 11? The bonus episode?
I haven't watched the bonus episode. I didn't get a chance to. It's funny because I enjoyed the Sandman so much that I was doing 2 things. The first thing, I went ahead and purchased the audiobook on Audible. I guess it's the author narrates part of it, and I've been enjoying the audiobook of the Sandman.
Oh, it's incredible. And Neil Gaiman's the narrator. It's incredible.
Yes, yeah. It is so good. And then the second thing I've been doing is Wakashasi's Tea House, who's another YouTube creator, has been reviewing all the episodes, all the comic book episodes of The Sandman. And I've been watching his channel just to kind of get more familiar with what the panels look like in conjunction with that. So I was listening to it. And ironically, you had posted, of course, on the Post-Geek Singularity that the new episodes had dropped. And I was like, oh, is that in the audiobook? And another member on the Post-Geek Singularity did say that is also on the audiobook. So I'm going to listen to the audiobook first, and then I'm going to watch the episodes. Robert, I've been enjoying it so much.
Well, I've said to people, it's an incredible adaptation of, they've literally adapted every issue of the comic. Now, they've had to make changes because they've moved away. We talked about this last week. They've moved away from the DC comics of it all. But what's really interesting is it's basically an issue by issue adaptation. And while some things, like I would say that 24/7, which is 24 hours in the comic, the Dr. Destiny John D episode in the diner was not, I didn't like it as much as I liked the comic book, but I still enjoyed it. And I think I'm amazed at all. And what's really interesting is all of the, like, having Gwendolyn Christie be Lucifer Morningstar, none of the gender or race swaps have bothered me at all because they're rather immaterial. I mean, they don't affect the stories at all. So to me, I love having, because an angel, Lucifer, angels aren't human beings anyway, so it really doesn't matter. And the Endless can take on any guys that they want to take on. And we've already seen in episode 4, Dream appeared as a black man, because when when there were only humans in Africa, of course the Endless they all appeared black, because there wasn't anybody. So that the fact that Death has chosen to take on the guys, like maybe in the 80s, Death looked like a pixie-ish white girl, and now she's in 2021 decided to take on the guise of the way she looks now. And that actress is so good. That kind of stuff doesn't bother me with the Sandman because it has the feel of the stories. that's the amazing thing to me, is that they were able to recreate the feeling that I got, the intellectual and emotional feeling that I got from reading those comics, and it's why it's my favorite comic of all time. But watching episode 11, which was an adaptation of 2 of the 4 books in the Dream Country, I couldn't believe it. Like, doing Calliope and Dream of a Thousand Cats, I would imagine if they don't do Facade, because that's literally like a DC, it's like a female metamorpho, maybe they'll do it. I mean, I can see them actually dropping that and using that to go right in. What I think they're going to do, if, as I suspect, I would imagine that the next season begins with A Midsummer Night's Dream, where Shakespeare, who we already saw in episode 6, that Shakespeare has written A Midsummer Night's Dream, and they're going to perform it. The traveling players end up performing it for all the actual real fairies that A Midsummer Night's Dream is about. And like the real real Puck decides to replace the actor and be in the play himself, or itself, or whatever you want to call it. And it's a great story. And then Calliope, they drop in Calliope that Dream and Calliope have a son. And if you know the comics and you know the legend of Orpheus is the son of Dream and Calliope. And that all the stuff that we've seen in the dolls, it like Rose Walker, everybody comes back. Barbie from the Ken and Barbie, they all come back. So all these characters have a part to play in the story. But so it was very exciting to see those episodes drop, because I just couldn't. And the dialogue is right out of the comics. I mean, it's really incredible. And I love Neil Gaiman was the skeletal crow in Dream of a Thousand Cats. I mean, it was great.
Well, a lot of people are talking, and there's been a lot of chatter about why Netflix decided to drop all the episodes all at once. And a lot of people are saying that they almost wish that they had not done that, so that every week they could have enjoyed the Sandman more by a release of each episode. And I guess what they could have done, right? Maybe the first 3 and then one afterwards, until they reach the entire, finish the season. So I think it's very interesting that a lot of people are saying that they almost wish that Netflix had done that, and kind of wish that Netflix would choose, especially for concepts like the Sandman, which can be, somewhat more complex than a lot of other series. It does deserve to have that time for you to kind of talk about it, online or in a show like this, or even, on our webpage, the BGS webpage, just to kind of enjoy these episodes and, fully understand what's going on. So I think that is very interesting in that regard. And I've never seen anything like that before, where a series drops and then they drop these additional episodes. It's really such a treat.
Oh, well, yeah. And what I love about it is the Sandman has and it completely is translated to the show. It has a very unique sensibility in terms of the fact that it combines graphic horror and romance and imagination, flights of fancy. It's a very heady, it's a mix that is very unique to itself. And there's nothing like it. And just like the comic, watching these shows, like I was worried about, I have to tell you, when I was watching the behind the scenes and stuff, I was like worried that it might look cheap, that it was going to look stage bound. It doesn't at all. I mean, sometimes they're on locations. Dream and Death are wandering around the city. Sometimes they go to hell, and the hellscapes were incredible.
Yes.
And the production values are amazing. And I think what's really interesting is the feeling of Sandman. When Sandman came out in '89, the feeling of it appealed to a small number of people, I think. I mean, they like the character of Death. I'm convinced that Hot Topic exists because of the mall store's Hot Topic, because Death and Emily the Strange, and there was all these characters that appealed to girls, and they would go like but that's a theory. Maybe it's only theory, but I do think that it's really delightful that we've got this show, and it's so faithful to the comics. Most importantly, it's recreated the feeling of the comics, because the Doll's House storyline is not your traditional narrative. I mean, it's strange, and I mean, the anthropomorphized, the whole family, the endless. You know, we've met dream, death, despair, and desire. There's
Yes.
3 left to meet. There's delirium, destruction, who is the prodigal son that no one knows where he is, and there's destiny. And I can't wait to see who they cast in those 3 roles. I don't even know if we get to destruction in the second season, but it's a very heady, imaginative program that, you know, it takes a while to sort of wrap your head around all of it. But I think the tone of it is so unique that it's really captivating viewers. You know, and I don't think it's ever going to have the populist appeal of a Stranger Things, but it's still doing well.
Well, it's much more. It's a much more mature, as far as I'm concerned, type of show than Stranger Things. Which I think with Stranger Things, your whole family could sit down and watch that show,
Right.
and it could be, you know, family entertainment. I think that there are some themes that are too mature for children in the Sandman, and I have to applaud them for the casting of the lead, of course, of the Sandman.
Oh my God.
He's unbelievable, and you know, he really does set the tone of the show. If they hadn't gotten that right, this would have been a disaster. You know, he really just has that wonderful magnetism about him, because he himself is very attractive. You know, at least I think he's attractive. But
No, I mean, he is. Sturge he's a great dream. I mean, I love everybody. The casting. I mean, Derek Jacobi showing up as Erasmus Fry in Calliope. I lost my shit. I literally was tearing up watching Dream of a Thousand Cats, because, you know, it's one of those things where I've read these comics countless times over the last, you know, 33 years, and I've read so many shitty Sandman scripts over the years that people have written. I mean, even Quentin Tarantino, he's doing podcasts with Roger Avery now, the video store podcast that they're doing. Roger Avery took a crack at a Sandman script, and it quite frankly, it wasn't good, because it was virtually impossible to distill the Sandman story into a 2-hour movie. It's impossible, because the whole point of the Sandman is it's like an anthology show, in that you are telling all these different stories. Like in the Dream of a Thousand Cats, the Sandman only appears for a little bit of it. You know, he appears as the dark cat in the cave, and he basically just says, well, you know, if you cats all got together and dreamed the world back where you guys were dominant and you played with humans and hunted them, it would change back. And then the other cat says, yeah, right. To get 1,000 cats to do the same thing is impossible. You can't do that. You know, and it was great, because sometimes the Sandman is not important to the storytelling. Can you imagine trying to pitch this show? Neil Gaiman talks a lot about it in it was either Variety or Hollywood Reporter, I don't remember, but trying to pitch this show to network executives. Well, who are the characters? Well, I mean, I can't believe it, but it was just dropping this extra thing. I just wish that they would just have made the whole series. So for those of you keeping score at home, there are 75 issues of the Sandman. I believe there's one special as well, and then there's additional graphic novels. There's The Dream Hunters, and there's Endless Nights. And then there was another, for the 25th anniversary of the Sandman, he wrote Sandman Overture, that takes place before the first episode, where the Sandman is captured. And the only reason Sandman was captured was because his power was diminished. And they've touched on a little bit of Overture. So, but the TV series, the 11 episodes, have now adapted 18 issues of the comic book. So,
wow.
Yeah. So by doing that math, you know, I guess season 2 would take us, if we get 11 episodes or something, what would season 2 take us if we get another 16 episodes? That would take us, where does that take us? To 18, 34? 34 issues of the comic by the end of season 2. So technically, maybe they could finish this in 4 seasons. But Netflix, I mean, even Stranger Things is going to season 5. So maybe they'll be able to do 5 seasons of the Sandman. It just depends on people if they're going to watch it.
Well, you know, the other kind of interesting thing about this too is that, and I know Gaiman is responsible for shows like I can't remember what it was called. Good Omens, I
Good
think was one.
Omens, yeah.
And that was made into a series as well.
Yep.
But this Sandman show has had much more chatter than Good Omens, and I thought Good Omens was a very clever concept. But there is something that feels, quite natural about the Sandman, and I think that their adaptation of it has just been so remarkable. I keep rewatching it.
Oh yeah.
Um, I love seeing Dream captured. um, I
Well, yeah. And I think that what they're going to discover is that I'm willing to bet that this ends up being one of the most rewatched. I don't know if they keep this or they keep these analytics, that Sandman will be the most rewatched show on in terms of people that have watched it. They keep going back and rewatching it again. I could see that happening.
Absolutely. And I think that because it is an anthology style series, as you mentioned, you can actually pick up from almost any episode and watch it. As I mentioned before, my favorite is the 24/7 The Diner episode, which I've now listened to in the audiobook.
It's
And
pretty different.
it is very different. And I think that for a television adaptation, it made sense to me, the way that they portrayed it.
Yeah,
Um,
because the original version is really brutal, and
yes.
he was leaning in because the Sandman started really as a horror comic, and he didn't really know what it was, and the Sandman, like Preludes and Nocturnes, had a lot of DC characters in it. I mean, Lyda Hall from the game, that was Wonder Woman and Steve Trevor's daughter from Earth 2. They couldn't. It's good that they didn't get into that. So, and what Hector Hall was, what, Hawkman or something, and it's
I think it was confusing, and I remember there was one audiobook where they talk about the Justice League a
yeah.
lot.
Yeah,
And
well, Dr. Destiny in the Diner episode, he's a Justice League villain.
yes,
And they
yes,
they got rid of all that, and I think that smartly they got rid of all of that, because
yeah,
and that's one of the things it would have, even when I gave people the comic to read, I said it's difficult to, I would tell people the Preludes and Nocturnes is really, really difficult, and it isn't really until you get to episode 8 or issue 8 with The Sound of Her Wings, where you meet Death, that it really becomes the Sandman.
yes.
But then, people, because it was so, but a lot of what goes on, I mean, Lyda Hall's son, Daniel, is incredibly important to the climax of the whole story. But you don't know that now, and but you have to have played into all that to or sort of understand what was going on.
Well, earlier today when you were on the member call, I think Roberto did a poll where he wanted to know how many people had watched all the episodes of The Sandman, and there were still quite a lot of people who were still in the process of actually watching the series. So people are taking their time with the series and enjoying it. And about, I haven't really heard very many people say that they're upset or not happy with the way that the show was written. They've said a lot of things about casting and changing the characters' identities were things that they were concerned with. Not necessarily that the show itself, from, let's say, a screenplay point of view, was bad. So people have their own ideas about what they want to see or perceive these things to be, and there are some people who think it's that all the changes are fine, and other people don't. But I think that this show is so unique, it's so different from what we're seeing in general, that they could take a lot of liberty on this. And I had talked about and said that I felt that the Desire character was the breakout character in the series, because it's like, how does everybody perceive Desire? Each person would perceive that character
The
differently.
way they want
So
to perceive that character, and that's the great thing
correct.
about Desires. Desire is what you want of them. However you want to perceive Desire, they will appear that way to you. And a lot of people have talked about. Look, I do think that there's a lot more, like, the show's pretty gay. I mean, there's a lot of male coupling in the show, and the Corinthian leans in, but the comic was always that way. maybe not as much, it wasn't as full of as much sex as we've seen on the show, which is fine. But it always, we talked about Neil Gaiman coming from a punk rock cabaret art background. So that was always all of that. What now people are perceiving as, well, there's too much, LGBTQ content or whatever in all this. That was always in the Sandman from the very beginning. It was always a very fringy sort of alternative lifestyle comic. That was that way from the very beginning. So when people complained, our friend Roberto Suarez, Roberto says, I initially wondered why a DC show is going to Netflix instead of HBO Max. Now I'm grateful given all the projects HBO has scrapped. I'm still concerned, though, because by dropping all episodes at once, it has quickly disappeared from the conversation. I don't know. I still see a lot of conversation about this show. Again, articles in the trades about why they held back this one episode. And I do think that this show is going to have a lot of longevity because people are going to keep talking about it. If nothing else, we're hearing people going, well, I really liked the first 6 episodes, but The Doll's House was really weird. And but that's, different strokes for different folks.
Honestly, I think that the series is a very unique series, and because of the nature of the graphic novel, and after having listened to quite a few of the episodes on Audible, it is just so unique, and it's going to be very different and very special. We're lucky to even have gotten this at all, and to have the author involved in it. We're very, very lucky. It's like a dream come true, especially after having listened to those audiobooks and hearing the expression and the focus of what the author has intended in that regard. It's very, very different, and I think I couldn't have gotten that if I hadn't listened to the audiobooks. But yeah, it is very special, Robert.
I think so too. Yes, and I think that's amazing. I think it's amazing that we will. I mean, we're. It's an embarrassment of riches. Now, what about? Hang on. We got a few questions here I want to address. Travis Slemp sends in a $20 super chat. Thanks, buddy. Thanks for the content, Rob. And Mikey Lito says, were you surprised that Warner Brothers licensed the Sandman to Netflix? I'm curious because I do think, if I remember, that the Sandman is creator owned, and that's another reason why I think that they have to that he was able to do it. Mm-hmm. So we'll see. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. We'll see. It'll be really interesting to see what they do with that, but I don't know. I don't know. Now, yeah, I mean, I don't know. We'll see. I don't know. T. Kane says, good evening, Robert. When do you think the character of Michael Demiurgos... Michael Demiurgos is, if I'm not pronouncing it right, he is not a Sandman character. He was created by Neil Gaiman, but I want to say in the books, for the Books of Magic, I think, because I don't think that he appears, I don't remember him appearing in the Sandman series. I'm not sure if he does, but he is the twin brother of Lucifer, of Gwendolyn Christie. Okay. I don't think he's going to be in the Sandman series. At least I don't remember him being in the Sandman series, but I could be wrong. Wesley Namila says, hello, Rob. Can I understand the Sandman TV show without any background knowledge of the comics? 100%. Yeah. The TV show, the Netflix series, you don't have to know anything about the Sandman at all. Nothing. You don't have to have seen anything, which is what makes it, I think, so great. That's another reason.
absolutely. I think it is unique in that way, and I think that anybody can listen to it. You don't have to know anything about it. You never had to have like listen to the audiobooks like what I'm doing now, but you may want to. So it's available on Audible as well. If you enjoy the TV series or you want to find out more about it, go ahead and get the Audible series that's, as you said, um narrated by Neil Gaiman himself. So it's really just amazing, Robert. I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's amazing. So let's talk. You wanted to talk some She-Hulk.
Yes, I do.
Um, well, first of all, what did you think of She-Hulk?
Well, ironically, I woke up in the middle of the night at 3 a.m. and I'm like, oh yeah, She-Hulk is on now. Let me watch it. And I have to say that as I said in my quick review, which was about 2 minutes, that I thought it was pretty good considering the trailer that we got, which didn't really tell us what we needed to know about the series. Yes, she is an attorney, and the way she looked physically in the trailer was questionable. We didn't quite know how she was going to manifest herself, but we got a lot of this relationship between her and the Hulk.
Yeah,
And I kind of wondered to myself, as you know, I have a fantasy. I've always wanted She-Hulk to kind of be like, the Incredible Hulk, where she's kind of going from town to town and maybe helping people, with law, off the cuff, and then, having to kind of like go on to somebody's clothesline and grab some, clothes and panties and such, because she transforms, she doesn't have any clothes, and she's got to go grab for the clothes like what we saw before. But we're getting a very different style of character, and she does break the fourth wall, which she did in the episode. And she now, someone had to go ahead and tell her to fight back or stop this person from killing everybody. But there's been a lot of chatter about how her power manifests itself, and also who's stronger, the Hulk or She-Hulk. And from what I've seen, it doesn't look like she's stronger than the Hulk. I mean,
no,
I think there's a lot of questions that we haven't had answered in this first episode. There's so much more. I mean, I wondered, Robert, if you had a chance to see more than one episode, perhaps
no,
the direction that it's going in.
no, I don't. I mean, I've talked to we had Christian Harloff on the John Campea show, and he's a lot of the reviewers were shown 4 of the 9 episodes. We were not.
Oh, I'm
we weren't. Oh, that's fine. But I've heard like this first episode with Banner was supposed to take place much further on in the series, like it was going to be a mid-season flashback, but they figured they should start with a bang because it is more of a lawyerly procedural show, which it's fine with me. I mean, I've just been enjoying watching it, and I love the world building, adding to the MCU and all this. It's talks about the blip, and we've heard a little bit about what's going on, and I love the fact that a ship from Sakaar shows up. Oh, that's a courier ship, and they don't. I'll figure that out later, which I thought was very funny. But I mean, what I really liked about the show is it's going to delve into what does it mean when you first become a superhero. Like with Steve Rogers, I mean, we've seen it's different. Like she didn't just become a superhero like with an armored suit or with a super soldier serum and then go to war. She's a normal person that because of this accident becomes the She-Hulk immediately, and she's not a superhero. I mean, in the comics, she was an Avenger, she was a Fantastic Four, a member of the Fantastic Four, but now she's just going to be a person who's now can be superheroic. And I love the fact that Bruce was like, well, now you're a superhero. Now you have to give up your life and you have to save and she's like, no, I'm not, why would I do that? And I loved that aspect of it, that she's now this superpowered being that isn't somebody who's like, well, I now have to fight on the side of humanity. She doesn't have to do that anymore. And I think I love that. She's just a normal person. And she's going to cope with this. And I've seen a lot of people. It's so weird to me that I've seen both men and women talking about her speech, about being angry all the time, about being catcalled and stuff, and about what does this mean for feminism. And I'm like, do you people not walk on the streets of America? Have you not been in cities? And it just like, This is just normal par for the course. I mean, I have a sister. You know, I have sisters, and it's like anyone who's ever what Jennifer was talking about. It happens every single day now to women, all the time, and it also harks back to something that Banner said in Avengers 1, where the secret is I'm always angry. You know, and it was always about it harked back to that too. I thought that was all very, very good. And I don't understand, like, everyone like gets triggered about feminism and stuff. I mean, like, have you guys paid attention to half the world where women are wearing hijabs and all this kind of thing? I mean, we do not have. You're talking about feminism from what, the perspective of an American, which is a certain way. It's frustrating.
Well, it is frustrating, and I think Tatiana has done a fantastic job with
She's
this
great.
character. You know, she has certainly made it very clear that she wants to stay an attorney, and that this is not going to have a change in her life. And the fact that the Hulk was there, kind of working with her, and we found out some things like where he spoke about that he considered killing himself, really, you know, touched me because, you know, these confessions that he had, that we learned, and of course, you know, it was compressed because it's in a show, and you know, it's not going to be sort of a prolonged soliloquy about him. But you know, I'm actually liking the Hulk character even more.
Oh yeah.
After seeing the way he was with She-Hulk, because boy, he really is a caring man. And now I'm like, gee, I kind of like the Hulk. You know, like I wasn't really thinking about him this way.
Well, what's
I never
great,
thought like that.
I mean, they're family.
Yeah.
You know, that's what another thing that people forget is they're talking to each other. They're families. They're cousins, you know, and they probably knew each other their whole lives. They're pretty close in age. So that's another thing. They're talking to each other like family members, you know, and to say that, like, first and foremost, they're family first. I mean, it's not like she's dissing the Hulk. A lot of people I'm like, no, man, they're family members. They've been family members, well, since they've been born. They're part of the same family, you know, their parents, brothers and sisters. They're probably nieces and nephews or something, or uncle, whatever. They're family. And I think that's not taken into consideration when people are talking about the show. And so there's a family dynamic there. There's a superheroic dynamic. But I thought Banner, I mean, there's probably more Hulk in these
Yes.
than in all of the Avengers movies.
Yeah, there really is, Robert. And, you know, hearing him talk about how this has affected him and, you know, essentially 20 years of his life or however long it is, for a good portion of his adult life, this has been dominating to him. And he talked about being there with Iron Man, or I think, or with Steve, or you know, with one of the gentlemen from the original Avengers, let's say, at that place where they were. He took her to a place where he knew she would be safe. You know, I find it very interesting because, you know, it kind of they kind of give the appearance that she's kind of running out very quickly. And for the sake of the show, I'm sure she, you know, they have to speed things along. But I have a feeling she'd been there for quite some time. And not only had she been there for quite some time, I'm sure at some point she would have to have this discussion with him about, you know, him saying that he wanted to kill himself at some point, because that's not anything that anybody takes lightly when a family member or somebody you care about says something like that to you. So, you know, to hear it come from his lips and for him to confess that, I think that that was certainly something that you don't hear anyone say every day. And it really made me take a step back in the sense of the excitement of being a Hulk versus, you know, what a burden this has been to him and how he's been trying to maneuver and work out how he's going to deal with this, even if it meant that he would have to end his own life. Um, and I have to wonder whether she's going to come to that point. Like as a foreshadowing, Robert, in the show, whether there's going to be something like this, because the trailer presents her as a woman who's going on speed dating and going to court, and
Right.
you know, she's up this guy, and you know, and she'll be like, well, that was a great date, you know, like, I mean, what, you know, they kind of present it as you know, sort of off the cuff. But even she is saying things that are might be associated with someone who might want to, you know, who has emotional issues, like when she talked about having that anger and constantly having to deal with it. We don't know whether this is something that's going to come up again for her and be a focus, especially since he shared that with her. and that this could drive her now. Having this extra thing could drive her to the point where she also might want to end her own life. So this could be something very serious. And, she's almost saying, well, I handle things better. I would never, it was almost as if she was saying, I would never get to the point of that. But I have a feeling that it is a bit of a foreshadowing.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that she's probably, because, Banner's Hulk, even before he was integrated, was really a monster. It's really, he was not, he was almost more inhuman, whereas Jennifer Walters, when she becomes She-Hulk, she's hot. She doesn't have the whole, her humanity is still relatively intact, and she can still think, and like the Hulk was surprised that she was an integrated personality, that she could still be herself. And I think that was, I think if you lose your identity, you lose yourself when you become the Hulk, that has to be hugely traumatic. And I think that played into a lot of what was going on there. And at least that's what I would imagine. So I think that's part of where so I don't know if they're going to go that way. I think they're going to play more of, it is a sitcom, it is humorous. So I would imagine we're going to lead more into that spectacular She-Hulk run, the John Byrne's run on the show, where it's much more comedic and not as much pathos. I mean, there'll be pathos, but not. I don't think she's going to become suicidal or anything like that. Because he even says, "Wow, we learned about how he had to integrate his personality and what was going on and all that." So, it was, By the way, Kevin Morales sends in a super chat and says, "Hey Rob, I love the Joanna Constantine character. Literally, the only difference was she was a woman. Her attitude, snark, it was just as good as Matt Ryan's take." Yeah, I mean, so Joanna Constantine was introduced as a Sandman character. It's just that there was also John Constantine, and they just replaced her. I guess she's in the series. She's immortal because now we've seen her in the modern day, and we've seen her back hundreds of years ago when she figured out who Hob Gadling was and meeting with the Sandman. So I guess they're going to lean, and that, to me, that's fine. Because again, Joanna Constantine was a creation of the Sandman series. So, and John Constantine was created by Alan Moore in the pages of Swamp Thing. So it's okay that, to me, that they didn't have, again, somebody like, well, John Constantine was, and I'm like, look, they're adapting the show. And it's an adaptation. They have to move away from DC characters. I know on Midnight's Edge, they did a stream when they were talking about how Bad Robot would prevent them from using John Constantine. And that could very well be, because I know they wanted to do a John Constantine show. But to me, it's really funny because Alan Moore's Swamp Thing was definitely a precursor to the Sandman. And John Constantine, and then Jamie Delano wrote the Hellblazer comic. So to me, the beginnings of Vertigo was Swamp Thing, Hellblazer, and Sandman. Those to me are the sort of the big three. They're the Avengers of DC's Vertigo books. So it's it's kind of a bummer that he couldn't use John Constantine. But if he did use John Constantine, then it's a direct connection to the rest of the DC universe, and it brings with it the baggage from the Arrowverse show and all that. So I'm glad they didn't use John Constantine, to be honest, because if they use John Constantine, then it opens up the door to more DC characters. And they've already, in those first 10 episodes, there'd be so many ties to the DC universe with all those characters like Hector and Lyda Hall. And I mean, I'm just glad they went far enough. Like Rose Walker's brother is dressed as the Kirby Sandman, which we talked about last. That was, I mean,
right.
So there is those connections there. They're just not overt. You'd have to know that he was the Kirby Sandman from the 70s. Most people aren't going to know that. But that was like a nice nod. So Kevin, I'm glad you liked the fact. I'm glad you liked the fact that you liked Joanna Constantine. And Jenna Coleman was great. I loved her portrayal. She was awesome. Tom Jr. Jackson says, hey, Rob and always great seeing you both. Rob, have you seen the doc for All Mankind? Yes, I bought the Criterion 4K. I had the regular version, but now I've got the 4K. And I recommend the movie I Love My Dad with Patton Oswalt. Yeah, I really want to see that. That's the movie where a guy's dad catfishes him.
My God.
Yeah, it pretends he's a woman. And by the way, there's that documentary about Manti, the football player who got catfished by well, she wasn't trans at the time. She hadn't begun a transition, but was catfished by this other person pretending to be a girl, and he thought he had a girlfriend, which it's on Netflix. That documentary was crazy. I heard Manti on NPR tonight when I was going to pick up dinner, so that was interesting. Doubletar says, Rob, do you think Marvel will ever do truly 40-minute episodes and abandon these 23 minutes of content? I believe it is truly hurting the quality of these shows. Well, I don't know. I mean, it depends. Like, look, I think it'll come out that I wouldn't be surprised if this first episode of She-Hulk was the most expensive episode of a Marvel show because of all the CG.
Yes.
I mean, how expensive that would have been to do. But I think that we're going to start seeing, like, I think Andor is going to have much longer episodes. The MCU shows, I mean, I don't know. Again, they're very expensive to make, and I tend to believe that they're not shooting these as individual episodes. You know, I think they're probably making them as almost like one long movie, and then they figure out where they're going to cut them. I mean, they'll build in, or maybe they are. Maybe they're making it like a regular TV show. I don't know. But, I mean, I know everyone talks about the fact that these episodes are so short. But I think with She-Hulk and with WandaVision, because they're leaning into the sitcom idea, that for She-Hulk, I think it's part of the DNA of the show, that it's supposed to be what it is. And we'll know what it's like as it moves forward, because I think this first episode was probably atypical. So.
Yes, I agree. And people were kind of wondering why they didn't drop 3 episodes, but you know, it is what it is, and you know, that's what we're going to get. But it would have been helpful to just have that sense of what the series is going to be like with just the first 3 episodes. But it's okay. I mean, it's going to go by fast, and we'll get a greater understanding of what's going on. But I think a lot of what she said and what a lot of people, you know, were mentioning are just her quick responses. Maybe she feels like she has to defend herself, even to her cousin at this point, you know, but I have a feeling she's going to realize that he knows better, and she will be going back to him for help at some point.
Yeah, I mean, there's literally only one person on Earth that can give her any advice on what it's like to be a Hulk. One. Yes. And that happens to be a family member. You know, so that's it. And that's, you know, it's sort of a weird thing. Matthew Medina has become a member of the channel. Well, thank you. We had a member call today. It was delightful. He became a PGS hero. Well, thank you, Matthew. I appreciate that. Darth Plato, who is a PGS VIP who we saw today, says the complaint that She-Hulk is feminist is weak. Feminists tend to say, the lady doesn't need saving. Not receiving instruction from a man, Jen was rescued from the car and Bruce offered the learning experiences of Hulkness. And I would say that's true too. And you know, I don't see that like, oh, well, this woman was dissing on Bruce. I didn't see that at all. They were family members, and he was trying to tell her, well, now that you're a Hulk, you know, he's giving her the great power comes great responsibility speech, and she rejects that. She's like, I'm my own woman. You know, I don't have to go be an Avenger. If that's what you want to do, go be an Avenger. I've got a life. I'm going to return to my life. And I like that. I thought the Hulk was saying, but no, you must now accept this mantle of, and I think that was great that she said, fuck that, I'm not going to do that. I mean, I thought that was good. Because why should you? If you got let me ask you this. If you got superpowers tomorrow, would you think that you needed to save the world?
No.
Like, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't. I'd still want to go make movies and stuff, and I'd do things like I'd figure out ways to like siphon off a penny from everyone's bank account into my bank account so I could be a billionaire and use that money to go do something good for the world.
You know, go make just of like every bank account in the world.
Yeah, I mean, I you know, 1 penny. Just take a penny from everybody and siphon it away or do something. I mean, why does every superhero? I mean, I wouldn't be bad. I wouldn't want to hurt anybody, but I'd want to set myself up in a very cushy way so I didn't have to worry about the stress of everyday life. You know, pay the mortgage off, pay the house loan off, and just take care of yourself. Why does it's so funny because why does everybody in these shows have to be? And the Hulk was saying the same thing to her. No, you have to be a superhero. And the question is, well, why? I don't want to be a superhero. So I have these superpowers, I'll go be a lawyer. That's what I do to help people.
But this is also going to be the first time that we're going to see a superhero who's dating like this, right? I mean, we haven't had an actively dating superhero and watching them have a relationship, I guess, with one person or multiple people. This is going to be a very interesting ride.
Yeah, I mean, again, if I got to hook up with a She-Hulk, I'd be like, man, I feel inadequate. I don't have the equipment to satisfy you. I'd feel that way, and I'd be like, I always fall back to my oral skills, which wouldn't work either because it's just there's a lot more ground to cover.
Could any man satisfy her? This is something that she might also have to come to terms with.
Yeah. I mean, that's only if she's a size queen. But, I mean, physically, I mean, you just can't. There is a size differential there that you're never going to be able to figure that out. Because, you want to be able to satisfy your lover.
Yes. And, the way that she thinks, the way that she's kind of operating through all this, I'm wondering if she's going to be thinking that, she's doing her career and that's important and wants to find someone to be with. And now this complicates the issue more than anything else.
Yeah. I think that, I mean, it's true because, I mean, let's face it. If She-Hulk was your girlfriend and she can change, she can come down to be, Tatiana Maslany, that would be good. But, come on, who wouldn't want to bang She-Hulk?
Well, perhaps heightened emotions. You remember, she said that she could control certain things in certain conditions, but in a heightened state where might be experiencing things she hasn't experienced in a while, or since she's been the Hulk, she hasn't experienced that. She may not have the same amount of control. And they are implying, seeing her carry some guy in her living room, that she's carrying him off somewhere.
Yeah.
It's an implication, Robert. I know what I saw. I know what that means.
Oh, yeah, totally.
If it had been the other way around and a man was carrying her, we would assume, like they're going to go into the bedroom or something at some sort of intimate moment. It certainly isn't, going to be an ordinary experience for her.
No, somebody just said in the chat, they said Luke Cage. My man Mike Coulter he's one hunk of burning love. I mean, that is a beautiful man. And if you saw the first season of Jessica Jones, I think Luke Cage could get the job done. Something tells me Luke Cage, Power Man, can live up to his name. I would, to be honest, now I want to see that. I want to see that love scene. But I mean, that's a lot of.
Robert, that was the first thing that grabbed my attention because we don't normally see love scenes of superheroes anyway. So now they're really narrowing their focus on that point, the speed dating, her, possibly being intimate with someone. I mean, this is very interesting, and I can't wait for them to blow the lid off of this unbelievable experience for her.
Well, we talk about Paul Chatto. Paul Chatto made a really great point that I think everybody needs to be mindful of, is that this is a sitcom, and the sitcom trope of leaving the characters in the same place you find them at the beginning of the episode is probably going to be very true, and they're leaning into the sitcom nature of it all. So you have to remember the form of the sitcom, which I love, and we saw they were incredibly respectful to the sitcom form in WandaVision, which I thought was great. So
yes, they were. Yeah, it's true.
So it'll be interesting to see. I mean, I think this first episode was an atypical episode, and one of the reasons I wish they dropped more is we had more of a sense of what the show was going to end up being. You know what I mean?
Yes, absolutely. And, once we get that feel, once we're 3 episodes in, I think then we can start to, or at least as Mikey Lito says, watch first, then form opinion.
Yeah,
so
totally.
We'll get that opinion for sure for her. So this is going to be a fun ride.
Yeah, I think so too. Wesley Namella says, hello, Rob. I have a huge physical media collection of over 1,000 DVDs, Blu-rays, and 4Ks in storage tubes. But, Rob, I need suggestions for permanent storage. Well, for me, I just have shelves. I have these media shelves. I think they store 750 discs on the shelf or something, and I have 5 of them over here, and and they're good. I mean, I like them and I can walk around and stand in between them and look at all my discs, and so can anybody else if they want to watch a movie or bar or something. That's what I do. I mean, in terms of permanent storage, I just like to be able to see my discs and be able to get to them. And my movies are alphabetized. I don't put my Criterions aside and the Arrow discs aside, and they're strictly alphabetized. Although I recently moved my 4Ks out of my stuff and I have all my 4Ks together. So that's what I do. Matthew Medina says, I've been a huge fan for a while. Helped me get through the dark times. And so I had one of those parents that tried to shelter me with literature and film. Sandman in 2013 changed my life. Matthew, I can totally see that. I think Sandman actually changed a lot of people's lives. I think that there were people that thought they were alone. That one of the things about Sandman is the way it looks at the world. I think even though a lot of horrible shit happens in Sandman, there is a lyrical quality to all of the storytelling, and it says that every life matters. In a way that every life has the potential to do something great, and that there is truly, one of the things I loved about Sandman is there is truly wonder surrounding us all the time. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something that a lot of people forget, that there is wonder everywhere. And Sandman is if nothing else, it's a show about the wonder of existence. Or it's in storytelling. It's about the fact that stories are about our shared experience. The shared human experience is shared through the power of storytelling, and that's what Sandman is about: the power and need and uses of storytelling. And storytelling is truly magic because you're conjuring up emotion from telling a story. I mean, how amazing is that? That's true power, to be able to elicit an emotional response. So, Matthew, I totally relate to that. Michael Preston says, hi, Robin. Did you see the season 5 trailer for Cobra Kai? Talk about a clear good and evil character. I loved it. What do you think? Did you see that trailer?
I haven't seen the trailer. Have you, Robert?
It's fucking great. I mean, I think that our viewer Michael is absolutely correct. I mean, that trailer's like, fuck yeah. I mean, I watched that trailer and the battle lines literally have been drawn, and it's great. I mean, that show, they announced that some of the Cobra Kai creators are going to make a Ferris Bueller sequel. Did you read this? That they're going to do it. They're going to make a Ferris Bueller spin-off about the 2 valets that borrow the Ferrari and take it for a joyride when they go have their fun in Chicago. And I'm like, okay, first of all, that's insane. And second of all, I'm like, well, if the guys from Cobra Kai are doing it, they have my attention.
I agree. It sounds promising. They've done such a great job with seasons 1 through 4. I just love that they were able to bring things together so well and represent different generations in a realistic way. It's been fun watching this series, and they've done everything right so far. I have confidence in them, so I think we're in for a treat.
I do too. It looks great. It really looks great. Matthew Medina has a really interesting. He goes on to say, this is really interesting. The secular religious philosophy in Sandman just blew my mind, and it opened my mind to many religions and many philosophies, and opened to gender fluidity and being accepting of the LGBTQ community. Well, it's interesting because gender fluidity in the LGBTQ community was a big part of Sandman from the very beginning. And, I think that was because Neil Gaiman's influences when he was coming up, he was in punk bands and goth bands, or hanging out in the cabaret culture art scene and all that. And, there's a lot of gender fluidity there. So that was baked into the comic from the very beginning. And I really like that as well, because it it's definitely not a series about milquetoast human beings.
No.
You know, you and the idea that we the human beings, the characters in the Sandman are sort of unshackled from traditional gender norms or life in general. They're all people that are, because when you really think about it, I think that people would be, I mean, I think our traditional ways of being, like are only because we've created them that way. And if you can think beyond those norms, and I think what's great about Sandman is it shows that you can be a great person and not conform to normalcy. You know, you don't. There's all kinds of good and bad people in the world, and you know, it's you can find them everywhere, not just in traditional places. And that's what I loved about Sandman, is that it does. And another thing, you know, all the religions of the world in the Sandman comic are valid. They all and if they really do the Season of Mist storyline, and there's no reason to think we're not, you meet the pantheon of gods. There's Egyptian gods and Japanese gods and Norse gods and all of these gods, and even, I don't know if they're going to call the one true God or just the presence. I mean, in the Season of Mist storyline, God sends 2 of his angels to observe. You're going to see what's going to happen. So even the Judeo-Christian God of the Old Testament is recognized in Sandman, along with all the other religions. And it's really interesting how it explained, because religions fall in and out of favor depending on their believers, and all of that is part of the Sandman, which is so great. And it's great to hear you say that, Matthew. And thanks for supporting the channel. I appreciate that. But you're absolutely right. I mean, that was one of the great things about Sandman, is it does touch on philosophy, and it does touch on everything from you know, Shakespeare to ancient mythology to foreign, you know. And it's funny because I recently read an essay that was written this year about the story Ramadan, and it was written from a feminist, an Arab feminist's perspective about that story. And I won't get into what she said, but let's just say she wasn't a fan of what they did in Ramadan. And I thought it was really interesting. It was so, in a way, it was so cliche about what she was saying about these, you know, these white guys telling this story about Iraq and Baghdad, you know, and the Scheherazade and reconceptual. And I understand where she was coming from, and it was an interesting essay, but it was written from such a predictable academic perspective, because I think she's getting her PhD, and I'm like, I get it. But David Milana in the chat says Ramadan is one of my favorite one-shots. Yeah, you should look it up, like review of Ramadan, and I think she did it in January. It'll piss you off. The review will piss you off, but you're just like, wow, you're gonna okay. I think she kind of missed the point, but what are you gonna do? Dublatar says, for 40 minutes of content, we don't need superpowers every episode. Look at Ozark, Daredevil, etc. Deep character developing quality stories. The series should be deep dives into the lives of the characters. I agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with that totally. Do you think that's true? Because I think that the sitcom form follows that. Bill Barkley wants to know, is 1/6 Scale Man coming? Lael is at a wedding, and he said he would join us when he can. And I said, take your time, buddy.
I do agree, because that's the thing that's most interesting to me about She-Hulk, is not that she is the Hulk. It's this idea of her relationship and looking at the relationships of people, which is something that they really haven't been doing. So now, you know, we have to be kind of focused in on how important that's going to be in her life. So I'd rather just find out how she's handling things aside from this whether she's using her powers or not. So for me, I'm actually more interested in the love aspect, and I feel that there does need to be love in this. She needs to have something, because I don't think she can do this alone. I think she needs to have a partner, or somebody, some sort of love interest there.
Yeah. Yeah, I absolutely. I mean, we'll see what happens.
I mean, even Dream has a love interest, although the love interest is in hell. But supposedly they were lovers and very passionate, and she betrayed him or something. And I'm really interested in that. To even decide that Dream would have a love interest. Think about the importance of why that character would need a love interest. You don't have to put it in, but it does play a role.
Oh yeah, and look, the fact that like Nada, his girlfriend, the queen of the First Peoples, not only was that his love interest, but she pissed him off so much he banished her to hell for 10,000 years. Like what a douche Dream was. And that also comes into play in A Season of Mists. That's how it starts. A Season of Mist starts that way, because what's really interesting is in A Season of Mist's Dream, they have a dinner at the Endless. The Endless have a dinner. The only Destruction doesn't show up, but everybody else does. And they have like a family squabble that leads when they all get on Dream's case. Like, you're a douche, dude. You sent your lover Nada to hell for 10,000 years because she pissed you off. I mean, come on. And then he gets up and is like this a petulant child and goes out on the balcony, and it's Death who comes out to console him. And he's like, and she's like, "No, brother, you were a dick. That was a dick move." And then he says, "Well, I guess I have to go make it right." And that's when he knows he has to go back to hell and face Lucifer Morningstar again to see if he can get Nada out of hell, even though he put her there 10,000 years ago. And so begins A Season of Mists, which is one of my favorite Sandman storylines. The film guy says, he's got one of two. He says, "I found her," meaning She-Hulk's speech, "was tainted. She said she was better at handling emotion, but the first time she turned, she was going to kill some dudes. My female friend, whom was watching it with me, laughed at it and said, 'Oh yeah, because us girls are known for handling our emotions well.'" Well, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I looked at those comments that she made, and I think that the idea that she's even comparing herself to, let's say, the only other person she's talking to, the Hulk, if she's comparing herself to her cousin, it was kind of unwarranted, because remember, his experience as a Hulk is going to be different from her experience. They're two different people.
Right.
It's not going to be the same. So there's no reason to imagine that she can really compare herself to him. She doesn't know what she's going to feel or how she's going to be able to control this going forward. He's had, 20 years of handling this or so? A good portion of his adult life. So, she is kind of just talking off the cuff, and she really doesn't know what she's saying. But it's okay, because she doesn't know what to say at this point. She's probably very scared about it.
Yeah, I mean, deep down inside, she's trying to figure out what's going on. I mean, yeah, she's scrambling. Her whole life has been changed because if you think about it, look at what people know of the Hulk, and look what Jennifer Walters probably knows about her cousin. He's been defending the planet against alien threats. He was on he disappeared for 2 years on an alien planet. The Thanos snap happened, and it was him who was able to snap back everybody. I mean, can you imagine if you think you're going to have to be a part of that crazy, insane world? Anybody would, I think, feel trepidation now that they're a Hulk, and be scared, even if they didn't want to admit it. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. I don't know. It's going to be really interesting to see how it all plays out. Matthew Medina goes on to say, in the Neil Gaiman verse, where would you rank Good Omens, American Gods, and the A24 gem How to Talk to Girls at Parties that is based off his short story? Well, John Cameron Mitchell, who plays the drag queen owner of the inn in A Doll's House, directed How to Talk to Girls at Parties. He also, of course, created Hedwig in The Angry Inch, and he was the first Hedwig that Mason, who plays Desire, was later a Hedwig on Broadway. So there's a whole, and again, cabaret culture, transgender, the transgender experience, all of that was part of Hedwig, and so you've got all of these characters and people that are, it's all very insular in terms of all these creators know one another, which I think is pretty cool. But in terms of the Gaiman-verse, I mean, I think everything, like, maybe there's a few little things when he cheekily intertwines people, like Good Omens he wrote with Terry Pratchett. And I think that's kind of unto itself. But, you know, I love American Gods. I mean, I have all of Neil Gaiman's Neverwhere. I have all of Neil Gaiman's books on my shelf right here. I'm a huge Neil Gaiman fan. But, I mean, I think that Sandman, they all kind of stand alone. I mean, his idea of, he keeps returning to the idea of gods, and I love all that, because that's where stories begin. You know, the idea of why are we here, and what's up there, and who controls us, and all that. I mean, the gods themselves, the idea of gods inspires so many stories. So I don't know if there's so much of a Gaiman verse as Neil Gaiman exploring the relationship that human beings have with their stories and how we define ourselves through those stories, whether it's religion or whether it's you know, one small tale of somebody who lives down the lane or something. But I don't know if necessarily, they're all kind of different to me. They all work in different ways, and I find a lot of his stuff equally delightful, I guess. Have you read a lot of his work?
I haven't, but I did watch a few episodes of Good Omens, and it is very different. I mean, you can't put it all into one category, which makes him as an author very, very unique, to be able to create such incredible and original work. You know, it is quite remarkable. So I couldn't rank them, but if because of the nature of how unique they are, if you're looking for a different type of show, program, or audiobook, whatever you prefer, I would look at his work because each of them are so unique.
Yeah, I mean, and also if you're a fan, if you want to really delve into Neil Gaiman, the Sandman audio dramas are a great place to start, because you actually hear him narrating and they're beautifully done.
So good.
They're
Robert,
so
I'm
good.
enjoying it so much.
And I mean, they're on Audible. They're so good. I was blown away. And I sat and listened to the first one in one. I was puttering around the Robservatory, moving stuff around, and listened to the whole thing. I mean, it's incredible. Incredible. Brian Osborne says, "Hey, Rob, I recently bought the Uncanny X-Men Omnibus to experience Chris Claremont's run on the series." Oh, I have many of those omnibuses down there. I have 2 shelves full of X-Men omnibuses. To experience Chris Claremont's run on the series, do you consider him the best X-Men writer? That's an interesting question. I feel that Chris Claremont defined what the X-Men are in the modern age. Like after Giant Size X-Men, when he introduced the new characters, he defined what they are, but I think that he wrote the X-Men for a lot longer than he probably should have. And there's a lot of not great Chris Claremont X-Men stories, but I feel he defined the X-Men. But I mean, I don't know. It's I don't know if who I would say would be the best X-Men writer. I don't know if that's even possible to say, because I liked a lot of other, like I remember when Scott Lobdell came on and was writing X-Men. I was like, this is kind of a breath of fresh air. And there's been so many different writers on the X-Men now. I don't know who I would consider to be the best. I will say this. I mean, I loved it when Grant Morrison was doing New X-Men. I thought that was a pretty amazing. And I really liked it when Jonathan Hickman came on and made the X-Men fucking weird, but I really liked it. You know, it was crazy. The film guy says, in comics, She-Hulk hooks up with half the hero and villain roster. Even Bruce once or twice. Ha ha. Well, got to give it up to her. Yeah, I mean, I love that. Why not? She's a voracious, sexually charged personality. Why shouldn't she? And because she's a Hulk, she doesn't have to worry about probably getting pregnant, or maybe she does, or STDs. She doesn't have to worry about getting drunk.
Well, actually, they can drink a lot. See, I would listen to what they had said. It's that they get tipsy, but it takes them longer. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Or...
Yeah.
Okay.
But they still, but however much they drink, the hangover is still bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dan Blackroyd says Joss Whedon had a decent X-Men run too. That is true. That is true. But although I didn't like it as much as I wanted to, but it was good. Matthew Medina goes on to say, "Oh yeah, I've been in the El Paso, Texas punk, ska, reggae scene for a while now. I had to take a step back to get my degrees to build my artistic and academic tonality. English, poli-sci, and film, of course." Well, that's pretty cool, Matthew, that you knew that you needed to do that. You know, that I think that's great that I think that's great that you did that. So, but you know, what's really interesting is it's funny because I was reading a lot of people there's been a lot of people saying that they liked Sandman when they were younger, but now it seems a little simplistic or whatever. But that's to be. I mean, Neil Gaiman was young when he wrote Sandman, and he was developing as a writer as he went along. And the really interesting thing to see about Sandman is as you move through the books, there's so many different kinds of stories, and some of them work a lot better than others. But it's always really interesting. You know?
Absolutely.
Which is that's basically all you can really expect. I guess. Valdrain 1178 says sitcoms typically don't do character arcs and they stay surface level. Most likely She-Hulk will be as she is from episode 1. That could be. I mean, do you think that's true? I kind of think that's going to be. I think they're going to have legal cases that have beginnings and middles and ends, and that they pay off, and that all the characters and the cameos are gonna have. It's going to be fun, but I do think it's going to be kind of a romp. Do you think that? I don't expect some big, long-running character arc that's going to, we have to be. I don't know. Call it what you want, but I think that I think it's going to be a fun show. Do you think it's going to be that way?
Yeah, it's going to be fun. I think it's going to be very unusual topics, and I don't think it's going to be as Ally McBeal-ish as people are describing. I think
Right.
It's going to be very outside the box style show that, this might have been the most normal episode we've gotten so far.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Michael Preston asks, have you heard anything about the Foundation Trilogy Season 2? Has it been renewed? I love Season 1. What did you think? Hey, you know what? I don't know if Foundation Season 1 was the greatest adaptation of the Foundation series, because I don't know how you would even do that. But I really enjoyed it. It was some heady, well-produced, beautifully made science fiction that I thought was really, really interesting.
Yeah.
And I liked it.
Yeah, I watched it too. I did like it. I mean, it's not Foundation, just to be clear, but for what it is, Lee Pace, who I'm a huge fan of,
Oh, yeah.
was incredible in the series. And it, I think for the main character, this was not going to be an easy story to tell, but I loved what they did. And I think the explanation, the general concept of it, at least their adaptation of what the book is, came out okay. They did such beautiful graphics. It looked good. It's like one of the best looking series I've ever seen.
I think so too. I mean, for televised science fiction, it's amazing. Roberto Suarez tips in and says, it's a bit unfair for me to say that Sandman is not in the conversation. But for it to have come out just under 2 weeks ago, I expected to hear more about it in the mainstream. Mm-hmm. I would agree with that. But But I think we are going to hear more about it because it is a fairly obscure show that I think it's developing word of mouth. And I think as more people are finding it, you're going to hear more about it. I think the show is going to have longevity because it's the kind of show that it's not just about the plot. It's about the way it makes you feel when you watch the show, and I think people are going to return to it again and again. The same power the comics had and that the audio series has, the TV show has as well. And, you go back and it does something to you. It's very different than anything. You watch these big fantasy shows and you're watching like Game of Thrones as the plot unfolded. Once it unfolded, you'd seen it. So there wasn't a lot of there wasn't a lot of need to go back and watch it again, even though I've watched the series through a couple of times. But Sandman, I've gone back and watched some of those episodes like 4 times already. And I think people are going to go do that.
Well, what about the marketing of the Sandman? Because did you feel that the marketing was decent at all? Because
No.
I would say no. We should have been seeing so much more. This is an extraordinary series. This isn't like a regular series. This is very special. And you would think that they would be pushing how amazing it is, but we just didn't get that. And I think it's unfortunate because I think a lot of people are going to miss out on seeing a spectacular show, especially the lead character, that actor. I think that he really brings home the intensity needed for the character. And I didn't even realize myself the full extent of this character's significance until let's say the end of episode 1, where he looked the same and everyone else had changed. This was something that's quite remarkable. It implies that he would be the same, but until you actually see it, until you actually witness it, it's hard to grasp that concept. That's when you know that this is no ordinary series.
Yeah, no, I agree. And the thing about it is it really asks a lot of the viewer in that it's imaginative constructs of all of these things. It completely dispenses with, everyone is looking for modern narrative techniques. You expect it to be, okay, it's going to be the story of this one, and every episode is different. And then when you watch the first 6 episodes, they're all telling these different stories. And then you get to people are like, well, I didn't like I didn't like the back half of the series, which is totally different. It's no longer about the Sandman front and center.
Yeah.
It's about Rose, and it's a totally different story. And the Sandman is a peripheral character in what you're watching, which is, it's a total tonal shift. And people will, and look, Dream of a Thousand Cats. Dream of a Thousand Cats is it's a story about a house cat, who goes to see this. It's almost like in The Warriors when all the gangs of New York go to the Bronx, to listen to what the Gramercy Riffs have to say. I mean, these cats all go to this graveyard to listen to this cat tell this story, and the Sandman doesn't even show up except within the story that this other cat is telling about how she met this strange black cat entity. Now we know that's the Sandman, but the Sandman doesn't even show up. And even in Calliope is not even about the Sandman, and Dream is like summoned because Calliope is like in such despair, please help me, and he shows up at the end, but the story's not even about him. But it's about somebody that used to run in his circles, and does he owe them anything? So
what's interesting about what you're saying, Robert, is that even today, I can't remember how recent this video game was. There's a video game called Stray, and it's about a stray cat.
Yeah.
And if anybody had ever said that, I'm going to make a video game about a stray cat and people are going to buy this and play it, I think they would have laughed them off. But it's happened. I mean, these concepts of what we consider would be something that would be marketable, something that someone would be interested in doing, or even watching, as you said in that episode for the cats and their warrior style, get together in the episode, kind of seems absurd maybe 20, 30 years ago, but now it's imaginable. It's imaginable, so much so that there's even a video game. There might be a movie. I mean, the sky's the limit for a lot of the concepts in here, and I could see them taking a character and making a movie, or some other thing with it.
Yeah, totally. I really want to play Stray. I hear even the world building and it's really great.
Yes.
I can't wait.
And apparently, from what I've heard from people who are, I guess, cat behaviorists, that many of the mannerisms of the cat is realistic, and some of the features and behaviors are startling to see, which are, I guess, not easily reproducible in a video game, but they did it. So
Yeah.
you'll like it. It's I've watched a few walkthroughs of it, and it's definitely a fun, enjoyable play. So
There's someone in the truth of it in the chat says Sandman went woke, race swapped, gender swapped. It's unwatchable. I'd say I'm sorry, but that's just not true. I mean, it's the characters in the Sandman aren't people. Like, you're talking about because they race swapped death. As she says, death is more of an idea than a person. And as we saw in the show, Sandman was when he first walked the earth when humans were here, Sandman was black. And his first girlfriend was black, and he banished her to hell. And I think that's a great moment in the show when he's walking past her in hell, in her cell in hell, she sees him as she knew him in Africa as a black man, a young, handsome black guy, because that's how Dream appeared. Because back when the first humans walked the earth, there were no white people. They hadn't evolved yet. And so like, I love the choices. Like, of course, the librarian, the Dreaming's librarian, Lucian, who is an old guy, I guess I'll call him an old white dude, has been changed to Lucienne, who is a female. First of all, that actress is fucking great. That character is awesome. And the whole point is that, when you say it's unwatchable, the show is beautifully made, it's beautifully acted, and it's a beautiful adaptation. And what's wrong with that? I mean, that's like somebody going, well, how come Morgan Freeman is playing Red in the Shawshank Redemption? Because in the story, Red's a white Irish dude. He's not a black dude. Can you imagine the Shawshank Redemption without Morgan Freeman in it? I mean, no. and no one's gonna go, well, the Shawshank Redemption's fucking woke because they gendered or they race swapped a main character. And it's like, no, Frank Darabont cast the actor he wanted to play that role, and it was Morgan Freeman. And there's the moment in the movie where Andy Dufresne asks Red, why do they call you Red? I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm Irish. It's in the movie. And it's just, it's right there. It's just, I mean, and by the way, Sandman, in terms of what people call woke today, Sandman was the wokest shit ever back in 1989 with all the LGBTQ characters and the fringe characters and the transgender characters or whatever. I mean, again, Desire is truly transgender. Desire can be whatever you want them to be. That's the whole point, is that, Desire. Oh, go ahead.
Robert, that character is still the most fascinating character to me. And I kind of wish we saw a little bit more of Desire. Also, it's very funny because going into the series, I didn't even know this character existed. And yet, as soon as I laid eyes on this actor who plays the role, I immediately was desirous of seeing more of this character.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's very interesting because, picking, who would you pick to be Desire? It could be anybody. And this person who plays this role, I just want to see so much more. And to know that they are, let's say in at least in the TV adaptation or the series adaptation, are responsible for, let's say progeny, let's say of one of the characters. I was very surprised by this. And I still haven't quite figured out the motivations for it, but I think it's very interesting when you think about it that, Desire would seduce someone in a sense. You wouldn't have to be seduced by Desire because Desire, you already want Desire. So they don't have to kind of seduce you because as soon as you see the person, you want to be with them. So there's it doesn't have to be the back and forth of, hey, do you want to go out with me? I'm really great. No, this person was asleep, supposedly. It is very controversial in that respect. And Desire
also wanted to fuck with Dream, and so they're playing with mortals. I mean, like the gods of Rome and Greece. They would go down, and when you wanted to delve in and get a little human something, you go down in there and dip your wick or you oil your traps for whatever and get what you want from the mortals, and to screw with everybody else. So there was some of that. So.
But I also think that it's very sensitive of Gaiman to, let's say if this is actually what happened in the comics, because I can't say for certain because I'm not up to that point yet. But even the sensitivity of it, because these things do actually happen in real life. We hear about this happening in places where people are in comas.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
This stuff actually happens. And so I think it's very interesting to even put that in a story. The idea or the concept of it happening and the repercussions of that occurrence and, what happens after that point is very interesting. But desire is, I think, might be one of the most initially when the series is introduced, we have, is it the Corinthian or the one who Dream created for the nightmare part?
Yeah, like Fiddler's Green and what's her face, the three nightmares that escaped.
Yes.
What was really interesting is they strung like the Corinthian story through the first 10 episodes, which I thought was really good. And then they introduced Fiddler's Green and I keep wanting to say Goa, but that's not her name. Like Goa trance music, like Juno Reactor, but that's not her name. But yeah, I mean. I loved all that stuff, but yeah, I mean, there's some really edgy stuff in the Sandman, but it's presented in such a way like you think like, oh, basically Desire raped, this woman to create. I mean, Rose Walker is half endless.
Yes.
And or half, yeah, and so there's. Sorry, spoiler alert for anybody who's not. So she's part of the family, and crazy stuff going on there. Crazy stuff.
It really is, and you're not going to see this anywhere else.
No. Roberto goes on to talk about She-Hulk and says women have had to take on personas in order to navigate in a male-dominated world. In She-Hulk, this becomes a strength, giving Jennifer an advantage integrating with her Hulk side. Do you think that's true? I do. I think it's.
I think she needs every bit of advantage she can get because it's not gonna be an easy, like, walk in the park for her, is it?
No. As it is for any woman, doesn't have a walk in the park at all. Especially strong, intelligent, beautiful, capable women. I mean, they're fighting on both sides. They're fighting men and women that hate them for who they are. So. I mean, I've seen it in the workplace. I've watched it happen. I think anybody who's intelligent has seen what women have to deal with. We all have to deal with certain things, but women have to deal with things that I don't have to deal with. And
that is true.
I mean, I've seen if you're an attractive woman, you are going to get attention from men, unwanted attention, that is going to be a hindrance in your job. I've watched it happen, especially working in the entertainment business. Yes. I have seen many an attractive woman who is great at their jobs have to deal with unwanted attention all day, every day. And not just, I mean, I say attractive women because that's the most overt. But I think, all women have to deal with that because there is a draw. I mean, we can't fake, we're slaves to our biology. And we're in the workplace when men and women are fraternizing, it's always going to happen. And women have to deal with the men or the biologically we're the aggressors. So, and I've watched that my whole life. So the idea to say that, well, feminism it's so funny because feminists want to pretend that there's some world out there where they don't have to deal with men at all. And it's like, give me a break, man. I mean, that world does not exist. And if you don't want to deal with men, okay, you don't have to deal with men. But I mean, one of my favorite, I call it a horror movie, and I would love to do. I've always been fascinated by this, but Repulsion, Roman Polanski's Repulsion, that stars Catherine Deneuve. In that movie, Catherine Deneuve is this incredibly beautiful woman that no matter where she goes on a daily basis, if she wants to go get a cup of coffee or something, she has to deal with the unwanted sexual advances of men everywhere in the world. She cannot go out in public without, and it repulses her. Men and their sexuality and sexual congress of all, she's been so put off it drives her insane. And if you've never seen Repulsion, it's a fucking great movie. And I've always wanted to do a modern version of that, where the horror, a beautiful woman, the horror of what it's like to live in a world where it would have been a great Sandman story. You know, that maybe desire, just like maybe there's a human born, like Snow White is born beautiful but so pure as driven snow, that desire is like, fuck this person, and wants to drive him crazy, so uses their power and has everybody attracted to this poor woman, men, women, old, young, just to destroy this woman's purity. Because I've always been... What's that?
Stephen King inspired. It sounds like a Stephen King inspired story.
Oh yeah, I mean, you know, I've always loved stories like Job or C.S. Lewis, the great Christian thinker, wrote the Screwtape Letters, you know, and that Clive Barker turned it into that story, The Yattering and Jack, where in the Screwtape Letters, like, you know, like in Job, in Screwtape, you've got Screwtape and Wormwood writing letters to one another talking about how they're going to drive this mortal insane. You know, they want to get his soul. And so they do all of these things to make, well, one of them does all these things to make this mortal insane. But the mortal at the end of the story knows what's going on. And the only way to defeat this demon is to be like, I'm shining it on, brother. No matter what you do to me, you can't get under my skin. And I love that. And then Clive Barker sort of redid that story with his story, The Yattering. The Yattering is the demon and Jack is the guy, the human being. But I've always been, and I love those stories. I mean, I love those stories when you have these and the Sandman does all that. It has all these interesting intellectual concepts, these characters, and it's storytelling and philosophy all kind of rolled up into one. You're dealing with philosophical concepts, logical concepts, all at once at the same time. So there's many different levels of what's going on, and certain Sandman stories are more plot driven than others. And I think when you watch like a Game of You, it requires a lot more of the audience than the other Sandman stories when they're giving you these single stories in and out in one episode. So, Darth Plato says, I'll rephrase. Not from the car scene, Bruce was KO'd. At the bar, Jen freaked out into Hulkness. We can assume that Jen was rescued... gasp, from whatever happened there. Jen certainly didn't reject Bruce's help. Yeah, I don't think so either. And Darth Plato goes on to say, maybe I'm being shallow, but the comics She-Hulk was magnificent. TV She-Hulk isn't magnificent. Likable, but not magnificent. By the way, Luke Cage and She-Hulk did date at least once. I remember the comic. Good for her. Good for it. And Darth Plato finally goes on to say, revisiting Ferris Bueller? Sure, why not? I want to see a modern spin-off of the Paperboy from Better Off Dead. Whatever happened to that kid?
Like $2.
I want my $2. Actually, that would be an interesting, I mean, if you could do, if the story was good, you know, what does an entrepreneurial kid who puts up with, I mean, he'll stop at nothing to get what he's owed. What does that kid grow up and turn into? I'd totally watch that story. That'd be awesome. Where did he grow up? What happened to him? Brian Osborne says, did you guys see Peter Jackson says he's got another movie in the works, but he's developing the technology he needs to make it? And are you as intrigued and excited as I am? Hell yeah, I am.
Absolutely.
I mean, these filmmakers are breaking new ground. I'd love to see what technology. I mean, the great thing about Peter Jackson is somebody told me, I think that it was Jonathan Voico who produces the John Campea shows. We all were at lunch, and he said that Peter Jackson was talking about how he's gotten into model building again, and like all of his interests he had when he was 10 years old, he's been able to indulge them because, you know, imagine you're Peter Jackson, you know, Return of the King wins all the Oscars. Like, where do you go? What do you have to figure out how. One of my favorite writers is Dan Simmons, and I've talked about it before. He wrote this. It's fictional, but he wrote this book called Phases of Gravity, and the main character is an astronaut, and he landed on the moon. And one of the problems was that once you've landed on the moon and you come back to Earth, what can you possibly do that's going to top that? And if you do that in your 30s, what do you do for the rest of your life? And I've often thought about that with people who play sports. How do you play sports? And if you win Super Bowls, like you're Tom Brady, you've got a supermodel wife or whatever, and you're gonna retire at 45 or whatever. Then what do you do? I mean, he's got a deal becoming a sportscaster or whatever. Hey, Sebastian, brother. Sebastian, hey, it's okay. Don't be scared. Sebastian's a little scared, puppy. Hey, it's okay, buddy. It's okay. You're okay, buddy. Unless there's so many creatures in the backyard. Everybody's here. Sebastian's here.
Oh, wow.
Tallulah's here. Gilbert's here. Everyone's barking.
The whole gang.
The whole gang. The gang's all here.
I'm excited for anything Peter Jackson does. And, he's done such extraordinary work. He did that King Kong, didn't he, Robert?
Yeah.
And I remember there was an article where he talked about how he spent a month trying to get the CGI right for one of the emotions or one of the faces of the character.
Hey, Sebastian, it's okay, buddy.
I just realized that he's a remarkable person, and anything he does, I'm on board for. And I think the sky's the limit for him. I think he can create new technologies or do projects that might have been considered unadaptable. Now he can take stuff on like that because he has the confidence to say, I've created something new, now let's try this, let's go for it. And he doesn't mind spending a month, working on one or two things. Like, he's fine with it. And it's that level of creativity and desire for him to accomplish whatever he wants to. It's going to be great. I can't wait.
I mean, I have to say, one of the things about, I know that King Kong is a controversial movie because it's way long and there's even an extended cut, but I love the opening that recreates 1930s New York, Depression era New York. I watched that over and over and over again. It's just delightful.
It is wonderful.
I love it. And hey, why is everyone barking tonight? Why are you guys barking? What do you want?
Crazy night, Robert.
It is, and I got Sebastian here. You coming up here with me here, Sebastian? Here,
Bigger.
Oh.
Look at how big she. Wait a minute.
This is Sebastian.
This is the puppy?
This is the puppy, right, buddy? Right, buddy?
Robert, when I saw her in May, Sebastian was a lot smaller.
Oh yeah. Oh wait, I've got him all tangled up in my. How you doing, dude? You okay, buddy?
Wow.
Yeah.
He looks gorgeous.
Oh, he's such a good boy.
Aww. Wow, he got big. He got big.
He got big, and I got everybody's in here. The gang's all here, right, guys? I'm sure you can't hear me now. The gang's all here.
Yes.
Hey, buddy.
Yes.
Here, hang on. I'll let you down. Okay, we're gonna let you down. Okay, we're gonna let you down. Ready? Here we go. Okay, bud. Don't worry. I got you. Oh, there you go. There you go, buddy. I know. Here, you got to go around. Go around. Go around. There you go, Sebastian. There you go. Yeah, the dogs are all here. it's the dogs are here. I don't know what's going on. Maybe there's something outside they don't like.
Yeah.
I can never tell. Let's see. Where was I? We were talking about Peter Jackson. So. Yeah, I'm intrigued. Brian, the answer is yes. Whatever Peter Jackson's developing, I'm intrigued. I would like to see it. Rob says, "Go." Tobor says, "Rob, go and check and see if there are some coyotes running around in the backyard." You know what? How about I'm going to actually do that. I don't know what's going on. Let me turn it over to you.
Sure. Oh my God.
I'm going to you. Full frame.
Wow.
I will be back. I'm going to see what's going on in the backyard here.
Okay. Wow. This is very different. I wasn't expecting to be solo on the air, guys. All right. Well, I hope everything is going well and what he's checking on. And I hope everybody is well out there in the PGS. It was great to see many of you on the member stream earlier today, um, just to see how everybody was doing. There was one member who managed to finish a screenplay that he was working on, and that was exciting news. Yes, on tap for tomorrow, Mikey Lito, I will be having my Sunday brunch show at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Positive Fandom. So I hope to see many of you there tomorrow morning to do all the parlay in the fandom, and definitely do stop by if you are a creator or if you have work coming out or whatever your concern is. Stop by Positive Fandom tomorrow morning. So go ahead and put your comments in. We don't agree all the time. We like to hear different thoughts. So I sure hope to see you all there. I just want to say hi to Kevin Morales and Keely Chow and Yas Suravatsta. I know I pronounced that wrong. I'm sorry. Also, to Darth Plato, hope you are well. Thank you for all the super chats tonight. As well as Tobor. I haven't seen you for a while, Tobor. It's good to see you as well. And you too, Nathan. Good to see you, Nathan Trujillo, of course. It's very interesting to hear all of your opinions. And like I said, stop by if you are a creator tomorrow morning on Positive Fandom, because what we do is that we put creators links in the description and in the chat. We want to promote other creators like yourselves, whether you have a YouTube channel or whether you have an Instagram channel, whether you're an artist, regardless of what you create, we want to find out more about it. So we certainly do want to see you there. Retro Nerd Girl, hello to you. I noticed that you are also in the chat. It's good to see you. Bill Barkley, hello. Another very interesting thing, hi Tobor, is okay, looks like Robert is back. Let's find out what happened, everybody. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you so much, Kevin. That is very kind. Thank you. And thank you, Mario Lopez, as well. Hello, Robert.
I'm back. And now, guys, come on, man. These dogs. Anyway, were you answering super chats or anything, or just looking in the live chat?
I was not answering super chats. I was just speaking to everybody in the chat and promoting my channel.
Oh, good. Well, that's good, as you should. Wesley Namella says, Rob, you are right. There is awe and wonder in the world, and people sometimes forget. I'd like to see the world that way. Art makes me see the world as my inner child. Sometimes I get lost in the wonders. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, if I there is awe and wonder in the world, but you have to take the time. I mean, our existence is a wonder. We're all thermodynamic miracles, as Dr. Manhattan said. But I mean, anybody that just start looking at pictures from the James Webb Telescope, you just have to, it's a choice. You have to make a choice in life to feel awe and wonder. I mean, life itself, I understand life is mundane and having to deal with the daily grind of paying for things and putting food on the table and all that is but you can get caught up in that. And if you have to choose to seek wonder out. And, I've always told people that and you know what? Here's an easy thing to do. And I've done this a couple times. Like, just one day, pick somewhere that's within 100 miles or 120 miles of where you live. Just pick a place you've never been. Some small town, whatever. Throw a dart in a map. And wherever it lands, the closest town, and then read up about that town, its history or whatever. Maybe it has a diner. It doesn't matter what it is. Just read up about it and get in your car and go. Like, get up on a Saturday morning, get up at 6, get in your car by 6:30, drive. You'll be there by 8:30. You'll be in the town by 8:30. Go to a diner and have food, and whatever you've read about, and just go up and talk to people. Go, hey, man. And look, it might seem weird, but who knows what's going to happen to you? You know, you might talk to somebody that tells you a story that you haven't heard before. You know, and you've taken a journey. You've gone someplace you've never been before that's only 2 hours away from you, because everybody lives 2 hours away from someplace they've never been before. I mean, I'm constantly amazed when I go to L.A. There's a million places I've never been. There's 20 million people in the greater Los Angeles area. And there's all kinds of places. And if you choose to go see them, you choose to take it. And if you go with a friend and you both know what you're going to do, and then you talk about, you make wherever you're going, that's the subject of the day. Like, let's go talk to people. Let's go find and see. Like, maybe there was, like, one of the things I was in Tennessee working on a documentary project. We were outside of Nashville. And, you know, there's a lot of Civil War battlefields. It was beautiful. I'd never been to Tennessee before. And you'd find these little restaurants in the middle, like you'd not think that there should be a restaurant there, but there were. And everywhere I went in Tennessee, outside, we were about 45 minutes. I forget the name of the place, kind of this upscale place, about 45 minutes outside of Nashville. Not Ford, Franklin maybe. I'm not sure, but everywhere I looked, there was something interesting because I'd never been there before. You know, and all the people were interesting. Nashville, I loved Nashville, you know, going downtown, but it was a lot smaller than I thought it was going to be. Like, where all the one strip of the bars and the restaurants. But I loved it. Never been there. You know, and every place I went in Nashville was a wonder. Every place. Street corners. Going to the land, the houses and the land that they were on. Everything about it was marvelous. You know, and every person I met was interesting and different than anybody I'd ever met before, because I'd never been to Tennessee. And we were there for, I think, 5 days, and there was wonder every day. And it was amazing. I loved it. Like, I would live there. I was like, man, I never thought I'd ever want to go or live in a place like Tennessee. Well, mainly because I'd never been there before. And going there, I'm like, I love this place. This is great. But you'd have to go there and know. Right. You know, and I think that if you just you know, because everyone thinks, but we're going to go to Cabo, you know, we're going to go have an experience on the beach and do all these things and like but if you have the attitude that you could go anywhere and have a good time, anywhere. It doesn't matter where it is. You don't have to go to a tourist destination. You could literally go to some small town in the middle of nowhere and have an adventure and meet people that you didn't know and have a conversation you've never had and eat food that you've never tasted and see things that you'd never seen. I mean, you know, I keep thinking about, there's a Tom Cruise movie called All the Right Moves. And it takes place in this shitty, like, steel town. Or the movie Reckless. I've never been to one of those steel towns. I've never seen those giant, like, Pittsburgh or Philadelphia or whatever, those huge steel mills. I've never seen one. I've seen them in movies, but I've never seen one. Well, I want to know what does it smell like? You know, I mean, seriously, what is the smell of all that machinery? Does it have that sort of metallic smell? Does it get in your mouth because you breathe in it? I don't know. But I would like to know. I would go there. If someone said, would you want to go to, like, an old steel mill and that's built into the side of a hill? I would say yes. Yes, I do. I want to go. I mean, that's kind of what the Sandman's about. You could go anywhere, anytime, do anything, and that you can find. And the thing is, that is a readjustment of people's attitudes. And I think that, you know, now we're in a position where it's so adversarial. You know, everybody's like, oh, what team am I playing on? Which political party am I affiliated with? And it's such a weird thing. We have been maneuvered to feel that way. You know, we have been maneuvered by forces that are manipulating everything from algorithms to, I mean, a lot of it, the social media, it's not even a cliche. It is a tool that has been used to now to maneuver and manufacture and put us in a specific place. We are now being manipulated in a way human beings have never been manipulated before. And we are allowing it to happen to ourselves because it feels good. Whether you're angry or happy or whatever, it feels good when you've got somebody you can be mad at and be like, fuck those people, fuck these people, fuck those people, fuck those people over there, and fuck those assholes. I mean, it feels good because it's like what they talk about, the dark side of the Force. It's quick and it's easy. It's easy. It's more seductive because you feel something. It's hard. Like when you go to this, if you take these trips and go to these small towns or do whatever, it's hard to make yourself feel something about some mundane place that might be a hill with a tree on the top of it, and that's their big claim to fame. You know, it's hard to find wonder in that because everyone expects you know what the thing about the Sandman is? Here's why the Sandman as a thing works. Somebody in the chat said earlier, when you watch the story in the second half of episode 6, it's Hobgadling and the Sandman meeting in this pub every 100 years. They just meet in this pub. They meet and meet. Nothing is happening. It's the Sandman walks out, and then they even have Joanna Constantine for a few minutes is there too. But it's basically a guy meeting another guy in a room. And at the end of that bit, when the Sandman sits down with Hobgadling and said, when he says, I can feel it right now. I've read the comic. When he says, I know that you're not supposed to keep your friends waiting. Fucking great. That's the power of the Sandman. That story of those guys, the Sandman and Hobgadling, that simple story of these two guys deciding to meet once every 100 years is as emotionally affecting as anything you'll see this year on the movie screen. And it's simple.
It's simple, it's extraordinary, and it's understandable, at least when you're looking at time from in the past. If we were, I'm curious as to how they're going to treat it. Let's say if they were or had to go forward in time, 2100, 2200, 2300. It would be really interesting to see what they could come up with for the future ones if it was applicable, Robert. I think it has so much potential. Even a millennia from now. What a remarkable thing to be able to do.
Well, for those of you who have not read The Sandman, let's see, how would I put this? I don't want to spoil anything. But Hobgadling is one of the characters that delivers one of the final words on the entire show, the entire series. So Hobgadling he comes back and it's a beautiful story. All I can tell you is it's part of a story called The Wake. Mm-hmm. Be that as it may. And it's an incredible story. And that's the thing. What's really interesting, and if you think about how that story began, Dream and Death just overhear some dude saying, I've decided I'm not going to die. And they have the power. I mean, these entities are just playing with mortals. They're like, yeah, I'll tell you what. I'll just let him be. He won't die. Let's see what happens. Like, they're, for their own amusement, they're playing with mortals. These are gods playing with mortals.
And it's not a Dorian Gray moment or anything like that. He can just go ahead and live, and just like as if you had no time limit on your life. You stayed that age, and what would that mean going forward? The caveat, Robert, is that they had to meet every 100 years, or at least try to meet every 100 years in the same place. And, I think that's remarkable, the idea that the place would be there in 100 years. With the way things change so much today, it is interesting to think about the notion of that. And we kind of get a sense of that in The Time Machine, don't we?
Yeah.
Where, he goes forward in time, and, where he used to live doesn't exist anymore. And, he quizzes someone, you're not going to do this in the future. And of course he goes forward and sees the change. So it is very interesting to see their lives change and develop in that episode. It's really amazing.
It's amazing. And what I love about that story is I love the moment where Hobbs says, well, the last 100 years really sucked. I really had a shitty time. And these 100 years were horrible. Like, I got married and my wife died, my kid died. Everything was terrible. And so the Sandman is like, okay, so you're ready to give up and give your life up and die. He's like, oh, no. No. No, I'm not. And I don't. I wish to go on, and that to me it was like that in the comics too. And I just thought that was so life affirming because, he had a bad century, like a bad century.
Right.
Yes. I had a bad year.
Sometimes you're down.
Yeah. And it's so wonderful. Now, and another thing is like what a lot of people don't. The Sandman, Neil Gaiman's producing it. He's signing off on everything. So the actual creator of the Sandman is making all of the decisions. So you got to give it up because, and I just love how on social media he's like, "Fuck you, I can do whatever I want," but he hasn't. The integrity of the Sandman has not been at all altered, which I think is really really cool. Wesley Nemella says, Rob, you were right there, awe and wonder in the world, and people sometimes forget. I'd like to see the world that way. Oh, I said that art makes me see the world, my inner child. I get lost in the wonders. Yes, we addressed that. That's true. Tom Jr. Jackson says, when does whining about movies come back? Hopefully this week. I just need to finish cleaning up the Robservatory. It's just I've been so effing busy. Every place I get up in the morning, I'm out the door, and then I come back, and there's things I have to do. Like today, today this is the third stream I've done today. I almost did 4 streams. I was going to do a Robservations, but I had to eat something. I was just like, so it will come back. Mattuine, with a $20 super chat. Thanks, man. Speaking of religions in comics, have you ever read Alan Moore's contribution to Garth Ennis's Crossed? I love Garth Ennis's Crossed series. Crossed Plus 100. It takes place here in Tennessee. Judaism and Christianity are all but gone, and Islam remains. I have not read that, but I want to read that story. Absolutely want to read that story. Mm-hmm. I mean, there was a great, back when I worked at Warner Brothers 30 years ago, my friend Wayne Mogilevsky, who was working for Silver Pictures, he's a story analyst, optioned a novel by a science fiction writer who's no longer with us named Mike McQuay called Jitterbug. Mm-hmm. And it was all about how America had been conquered and the new caliphate was America was the new caliphate and Islam had swept the land. And it was really good. And he wrote a screenplay of it that was actually pretty good. I mean, it would have cost, $100 million to make. It was not like, as a first screenplay, it probably wasn't the best project to do, but I read that book and I thought it was really interesting because, like with Dune, Frank Herbert took a lot from Islam, and there's a lot more in the novel that goes into the ecosystems and the whole politics of the stuff, but he took a lot from Dune from Islam. And Islam is actually a very interesting religion as well. It's just that a fundamentalist aspect of that religion sort of took hold even back in the 14th century when the imams sort of rose to power. But, we had things like science and algebra were a big part of early Islam. And there was a lot. Islam is a very interesting religion. And I like the fact that that Herbert took a lot from Islam and Dune, and this book Jitterbug was fascinating. Of course, you probably could never get something like that made today. But I have not read. I didn't realize that Alan Moore wrote something in that comic. I loved Crossed. I have it up on the that was one harsh comic book. But Crossed 100, wow. Tom Jr. Jackson says, what is going on with the film festival? Well, as everybody knows, we threw a film festival. All the movies are still up, aside from one that I had to take down. I was asked to take down. All you can watch, I think there's 52 film festival films that we did. The first Intergalactic Imagination Connoisseurs Film Festival. The one thing we didn't do was award prizes. So we are going to one day get around to that, probably early in the when we bring Whining About Movies back. It was always our intent to finish off the film festival and award the prizes, because there's cash prizes involved too. We just haven't gotten back to it, but all the films are available, and I was surprised at all of the movies that we did get in the film festival. It was pretty cool. And I think most of them that stuck to the rules are up. So you can watch them, but we will be giving out awards. We have not forgotten. But you know what? People didn't make those movies to get some award. They made them to make them, and they're there, and we celebrate all of our filmmakers. You can go watch. They're on the top of the. If you go to the Post-Geek Singularity page, the film festival movies are on the top of the page, so you can watch them all. And some of them are really good. I really liked them. Matthew Medina says, agreed on his world building. Professors raved about Gaiman's genius. I feel the same emotionality I felt when I watched Dune 2021, which is a modern Lawrence of Arabia in my top 5 of all time. Dune is top 10 of all time. Yeah, look, I think that Denis Villeneuve's Dune is an amazing achievement. Talk about peak verisimilitude. Did you like Dune? You like Dune, right?
I did, yes.
Did you love it or just like it?
I felt that the film was mainly about cinematography and that from a cinematography point of view, you know, that's for me why I compared it also to Lawrence of Arabia. You know, the significance of what they were trying to achieve, and we just haven't really seen Dune put that way before. So, you know, it redefined what Dune can be. So yeah, I thought it was a great film. I didn't love the film, but I liked it.
You know, I love the achievement of the world building and how I think in terms of, like I would say, verisimilitude, I believe every frame of the movie. What I was missing with Dune, and I keep watching it, I find it fascinating. It has no heart. You know, you're watching all this stuff, and all the scenes are great, and all the acting is incredible, but it has no heart. You know, and even the scene with Reverend Mohayim, you know, and when she put the hand in the box, that scene is a great scene, but you don't feel it. You're watching it, and I have to say that I thought that the original David Lynch version, which has that scene beat for beat, is better. If you look, and I love Denis Villeneuve's Dune, but I don't feel it. I watch it and I think it's beautiful. It washes over me, but I don't have the emotional reaction to it that I want to. And it bums me out that I don't. But I love it, and I can't wait to see the next one. Because it's all the scenes are there. Most of the scenes are there, but even when the Duke dies and all this, I'm watching all this stuff, but it's strangely it's monotone. The movie's monotone. I never feel anything, and I am frustrated by that. But
I think it's because I think it has to do with the character development. So,
yep.
You know, I just felt that there was a lot that could have gone on between the Duke and his son that we didn't see, and even with the special effects, even with the beautiful effects that we were seeing, the part that I felt the most passionate about was when I guess Paul is on the planet for the first time, and he's with his father, and he sees the spice for the first time, and then he gets overwhelmed, and that was maybe the most passion-filled scene. But we know that there are so many other things going on that are passion-filled, but I didn't get that passion feeling from it.
Yeah, I mean, I love the way it looks. I think the visual effects, in terms of being convincing, everything is perfect. And I love the sound design. All of that it's amazing. It's an amazing, immersive experience. I just don't feel it the way I wanted to feel it. Mm-hmm. You know,
and
like...
I recall you saying something about the script originally having Jason Momoa kind of hopping out of an aircraft in the beginning.
Yeah.
And, you know, the excitement of that. And, you know, I think Jason Momoa, it was a character they could have used a bit more to give us the level of intensity that we needed for this series. I thought Zendaya was great in her part, but perhaps the other characters were not developed enough.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was all beautifully done, but I felt like I was watching like every scene was cut down because of running time. it was cut down to the bare minimum. And it didn't allow the scenes to play out. You didn't get to spend time. You didn't get to like these characters because what the scenes were doing was you get what's going on in the scenes, but you're not loving these scenes. You're not loving, like when you pick your favorite movie. Your favorite movie is full of scenes with characters that you just love their interplay, their interaction. You love it. You love them. You know, like I love Almost Famous, and Almost Famous is a movie that exists because of its character interplay and its storyline. Like Philip Seymour Hoffman playing Lester Bangs and just letting him, you know, Jethro Tull, amen. You know, his his delivery, and as a person, as a human being, your favorite movies. Same with Shawshank Redemption. Yeah. You love all of those characters, whether Bob Gunton is as the prison warden, you hate him, but you hate him because he's made you hate him, you know, and the character moments in that are so great. That's the one thing that I feel is missing from Denis Villeneuve's. I mean, I kind of felt this as much his 3 science fiction movies, Arrival, Blade Runner 2049, and Dune. I really love them all. But they all have a coldness and a distance to them that prevents me from loving them the way I want to love them. You know, it's like dating somebody who's cold. They're not like they're not warm. You know, you want them to be warm, and you need somebody that's passionate and has fire in their belly. But none of the characters. I mean, Jason Momoa, when he's in Dune, he's like, you're like, oh, Jason Momoa has stepped out of another movie. And for a couple of minutes, when he's talking to Paul, you feel like, here's a character, but he's being like, he's not being Duncan Idaho. He's being Jason Momoa. I'm like, oh my God. And his acting suddenly, it's like, oh, it's Aquaman. You know, it's Jason Momoa. And
especially the line where he tells Paul, you're bulking up, and he goes, really? He's like, nah,
right,
nah, bro, nah.
I mean, and that was the first time. And by the way, that seems so out of place in that movie. I mean, that exchange is totally out of place. Darth Plato says, this is interesting. He says, I loved Chris Claremont for the most part. My favorite run of his was the early New Mutants, especially when Selene was first shown. And yes, it's pronounced Selikine or Selenine. Okay, Selenine. There you go. I didn't know that. Selenine. See, you learn something new every day. Dublatar says, Rob, if you ran the Marvel series as a director-producer, what would you do differently? What's your pain points with the current implementation? Well, look, I up through the end of the Infinity Saga, up through the end of Spider-Man Far From Home, I had really no complaints with the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I mean, some things sometimes were better than others. But for the most part, I think it's a pretty stunning, those 23 movies are a pretty stunning achievement. I mean, they're still ultimately superhero movies. So you're limited by that genre, and they're Marvel superhero movies. So they set out to be consistent in the universe, but I'll tell you something. There's 25 official James Bond movies, and I would say only half of those movies are good to great. And there are 23 movies in the Infinity Saga, and I would say that 15 of them are good to great, maybe even more, I mean, even the movies that aren't so great, like the first Incredible Hulk, Iron Man 2. I like Iron Man 3 a lot more than most people, so I don't include it. But Iron Man 2, Thor: The Dark World, and I like Captain Marvel more than most people. But let's take those 4 movies. Let's say Captain Marvel, Thor: The Dark World, Iron Man 2, and The Incredible Hulk. They're still pretty good as fantasy films go. I mean, they're not. You don't sit there and go, well, that sucked. And then the Infinity War and Endgame are 2 of the most wildly entertaining fantasy films ever made. And is Infinity War I think Infinity War is a better movie than Endgame, but the ambition and the scope and the fact they tied all those characters together. I mean, there might be plot holes in Endgame, but you watch that movie and it's wildly. I mean, the whole opening with Hawkeye, and then when Thor kills Thanos, and then just watching Nat talk to Captain America about what's going on and the blip, and then Nat going to get Ronin, going to get Hawkeye. There's so much good stuff in Endgame. It's just what that movie had to do. The fact that it works at all is, let's call it what it is. It's a marvel. but yeah, I mean, but this, here's the thing. I have enjoyed I really liked Shang-Chi. I thought that Black Widow was kind of unnecessary, but I liked it. If it was included, it should have been included in the original Infinity War saga. We should have met, like, after we introduced, I would have made Black Widow, if you'd made it back after, like, Iron Man 2, like if you'd gone when she was introduced and then give her own movie, then I think it would have been held in higher esteem. The problem with a movie like that is it seems old hat, and you're like, why am I watching this? She's already dead. Mm-hmm. So why am I watching this now? But I still think it's an effective spy thriller. It has a lot of good stuff in it, and Yelena Belova is a great character. I like the Eternals a lot more than a lot of people do. But none of these things, after you have the Infinity Saga, the fact that there's these incredible things happening and none of it seems to matter. And I'm deep into this. I've watched Loki, and universes have come and gone, and Egyptian gods have been fighting over the pyramids of Giza, and celestials are coming out of the earth. Does anybody care? Like, what's going on? When Arashem the Judge is in the skies, I mean, you'd think the entire world would be thrown into turmoil. We just came back from Thanos snapping us. Can you imagine what the man on the street, what is going on in the churches of the world, no matter what religion you're a part of, after coming back from Thanos' snap, after seeing Arashem the Judge, after Amet eating the souls of human beings off the streets of Cairo? I mean, there's a celestial coming out of the earth. It's crazy, and they haven't dealt with any of it.
Well, I think they made a mistake by not letting the celestial completely emerge. I think that, that should have happened.
Well, it would have destroyed the earth, though, right?
Yes.
Then what?
Then, I don't know. We look at other verses out there, since we're going in that direction, right? I just think that that's what they should have done. And then they wouldn't have had to worry about all the other stuff that's going on or start over. But yeah, they should have let the celestial emerge.
Yeah, I just think that it's. I mean, I enjoyed like Shang-Chi. I like wuxia movies and all that. But again, what does it have to do? And I love seeing Tony Leung in the movie. I thought that was great. But what is it? After you've set up the Infinity Saga and everything is so closely knit, all of these stories, why are you telling me this story? And I know they're dropping all this stuff, like, okay, the 10 rings are connected to this, but are they? Like, and I feel like the problem with the whole multiverse thing is that none of it doesn't feel like, who cares? If the multiverse is in play, nothing matters. Why not just go get all the characters that have died from their different universes and have them show up and replace? It's I don't know. We'll see. I don't know. I mean, I enjoy them. I enjoy watching. Although the movie, I think the worst movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe is Thor: Love and Thunder. Mm-hmm. By why I hated it. I hated it. I was like, that movie could have been great, and I just hated it. I mean, everything. I hated it.
Okay, Mom, I love you. Sorry, it's my mom talking. The thing about Thor: Love and Thunder is that they purposefully put the word love in the title.
Right.
And I'm sorry, how much I love sex and cinema. I love love scenes. I love romance and stories. And this film I couldn't feel the love. I couldn't feel any real emotion and love in it. It just was very similar to how you mentioned your feelings about Dune. It was almost heartless, honestly. That's how I feel about Thor: Love and Thunder. There was no love. I didn't feel the love. Even in the end, it felt, like a joke. So I don't know. It was disappointing. So.
Yeah, I know. It's a bummer. But the question was, what would I do differently? I mean, I don't know. To me, what's really interesting is that I'm surprised that Marvel was as successful as it was. I mean, eventually superhero stories, there's only so many. Even I read comics for 30 years. I just one day, I was going to stop when the Sandman ended. Literally, I was going to stop reading comics when I kept reading them. But, the last new comics that I read from the big two was Jonathan Hickman's X-Men run, Power of X and House of X and Power of 10 or Power of X, because they were so fucking weird, and all the concepts in there were crazy, but I loved it. I'm like, wow, because people are like, well, I mean, I have hundreds of X-Men comics, and I've got hardcovers. I must have 50 Marvel omnibuses X-Men omnibuses and hardcovers and things right here on my shelf. And I love the X-Men, but I don't need to read another X-Men story as long as I live. I really don't. The Jonathan Hickman stories were so weird. They were so that it was so out there with Krakoa and what they were doing. It was so and I loved it. I'm like, wow. Now I'm interested. It was a totally different thing. The characters were there, but they were so different and weird, and a lot of people hated it. But I was like, this is great. But to me, superhero stories, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, so far, I think the thing about Phase 4 is there's nothing about Phase 4 that has been memorable, or the thing about the rest of the Marvel movies, even like Captain Marvel, I enjoyed. I think Captain Marvel did Captain Marvel come out after Infinity War? Because at the end, I think it did. Because at the end, when Maria Hill and Sam Jackson they disappear when the snap happens. I mean, even that, I was like, oh my God, I want to come back. I've watched these Marvel movies and they're fine, but I don't feel any urgency. Look, to me, I think maybe one of the most important Marvel movies ever is Wakanda Forever. Because if Wakanda Forever does not make you interested in the Marvel Universe, I'm kind of done. Because Doctor Strange, I wanted to love it. It's completely inconsequential. All of this multiverse stuff is all over the place. There's no, I mean, Kang, Quantum Mania, whatever. But after Thor Love and Thunder, I'm like, just don't care. And I hated the fact that the movie it didn't work. That Thor Love and Thunder does not work. It's a straight up comedy. They're trying to have it both ways, make it serious and at the same time, yuck. The TV shows, I thought like Miss Marvel on its own was a really great show. The way they leaned into the partition, the fact they delved into the Pakistan-India history and conflict and all that. And I love the cast. I thought the whole cast, the family aspect of it, I thought it was a delightful show. If it wasn't a Marvel Cinematic Universe show, I still would have liked it. About a girl getting superpowers or whatever. But at the end of the day, they even brought up stuff in there like the jinns and going back to their realm. I'm like, what the fuck does this matter to anything else? Why? Who cares? I mean, I much rather would just watch Kamala. It's a coming of age story and leave it at that. And I thought her family was I love the actors that were playing her family, and that's what it was about. And it was delightful. But I'm like, why this story? And I just don't think something's going to come along and tie the room together, as the dude would say. It's just I feel like I'm perplexed by all of this. And I'm like, you look at Spider-Man No Way Home, even Spider-Man No Way Home, as crazy as I thought that movie was, that they got Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield to come back, that was amazing. What does it matter? Like it was a trifle. It was a fun thing to watch, but at the end of the day, I don't care. As fun as that movie was, and as much as I liked it, and I'm like, oh my God, as a fanboy, I'm like, this is incredible. I don't care. At the end of the day, when it's over, I'm like, that was nice. I never have to watch that movie again. I can watch Infinity War and Endgame over and over and over. Captain America and the Winter Soldier over and over and over again. Captain America Civil War. Love those movies. I could care less about the Phase 4 movies. I don't have to watch any of them again. I mean, I really do like the first hour of Shang-Chi. I find the first hour of Shang-Chi, I love Awkwafina and his interaction. I love that bus chase sequence. You know, I love all that stuff, and I love Tony Leung. And I love the opening when Tony Leung falls in love with what's-her-face. That was great.
And I love the fantastical creatures in it.
Yeah, they were great.
You know, hear about, you know, all the time, but then to see them alive was incredible looking. I thought they did a great job with that as well. So there was a lot of things in Shang-Chi that were spectacular. With Wakanda Forever, my concern has always been the idea of taking the focus away from the men of Wakanda, because I feel that the men of Wakanda are incredibly important. They're just as important as the women.
Yeah.
And so I hope that trailer does not reflect what's actually happening, because as far as I'm concerned, there can be no Wakanda Forever if there are no men around. You need those strong men to fight alongside the strong women in Wakanda. You know, it can't just be a sort of like the way that it's portrayed, which is fine for the trailer, but I sure hope it's wrong. I sure hope that isn't what the majority of the film is about, because I have a feeling it's not going to be forever if that's the case. I have a feeling they'll get defeated. How they need those, you know, the men from Wakanda to win, and people want to see the men. Let's just be honest about it. I want to see, you know, more strong men in Wakanda. I don't want it to be where there aren't men around. So that's the thing that's concerning me the most about that film.
Yeah, and a lot of people are saying in the chat, my problem with Shang-Chi is that, you know, all those creatures and stuff at the end of the movie, but if you look at the first part of that movie is so schizophrenic. The first hour of Shang-Chi I love. And then it turns into, you know, fantasy. Like, why did it have to do that? Like, I loved when they find the Fight Club thing, when Wong and the Abomination are fighting. All that was great. And then as soon as they go through the weeds, literally the big bamboo poles, and they go into Fantasyland, the movie completely turns into something else. And I love wuxia. I love Chinese fantasy epics. I watched them growing up. But the feel of that movie, what Shang-Chi was, I mean, I love the fact that he'd run away from home. He doesn't want to accept his birthright. He didn't like what his father was doing. They could have kept that movie really grounded, because the original Shang-Chi was a cross between Bruce Lee and James Bond.
And it was really grounded, because we had that one scaffolding scene that looked incredibly realistic for what we would expect.
I loved all of that. And his sister, I mean, I kind of wish it just stayed like a Chinese triad movie rather than a wuxia movie, and get into the fantasy of it all, and you know, make it more like I don't know, a John Woo or a Sweetheart or a Johnny Toe movie or something like that. But it didn't. And while I did enjoy it, and I love Michelle Yeoh, and it was odd that you have Shang-Chi fighting mystical creatures coming from when it started in San Francisco, and the big set piece was a bus chase down a hill, you know, which I loved. I'm like, that's cool. Yeah. But again, it's you know, then what? But I think I still, you know, Dumbledore, you know, what would we do, you know, as a Marvel? I honestly, I would have, after the Infinity Saga, I would have taken a break. I would have said, you know, we're going to take a break for 5 years. I mean, but they can't, because they're still, I mean, Doctor Strange made $950 million. Even Thor: Love and Thunder is probably up above $700 million. These movies are still huge money makers, and the ancillary markets are even during the pandemic. I think Shang-Chi broke $500 million, and which is insane. And so, you know, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I don't. And the problem is, I think it's leaned. The thing about the Marvel characters is, even though you're looking at Captain America, Thor, and Iron Man, Tony Stark, they kept you grounded. Yes. You felt you knew those guys. Like, even Thor, you know, when you first meet him, he's throwing beer down. He's like throwing a glass of beer or whatever down on the ground at a diner. That's funny. You relate to that because they're at a diner. Now it's it's so far off into space. There's nobody, literally and figuratively. Who do you identify with? I mean, you go back and you watch the first Iron Man movie, and it's like, wow, this is a character study about one dude trying to come to grips with his own conscience, you know. And you forget that that's what it is. And now the Marvel universe, it's like with everything world shattering, and it's going to be really interesting to see. Now they have to bring the supernatural into it, like vampires and sorceresses and all that. How is that going to work? And that, what to me, they're just compounding all of this stuff, and they're not dealing with any of it, and it's all starting to unravel, I think. But
Yeah, no, you're right. I think that was incredibly apparent in one of the scenes between Doctor Strange and America Chavez, where they had this really cool segment where they would have to stand on this panel on the floor, and it would kind of like tell you the history or show some of the most important scenes in the person's life. And that could have been used as such a great tool for something horrible to be revealed, right?
yeah,
That should have been something. Rather, it was just used to show, oh, these are my parents or whatever, and it was boring. They should have pulled out the dirt there and made it more substantially significant that Wanda was coming or whatever it was. But that was their opportunity to really slam you with something horrible. And it would have been like, oh my God. But we're missing those moments where we're mystified by this stuff now.
yeah, I know, and it's a bummer. Matthew Medina says, conspiracy Breaking Bad prequel ends a week before the Game of Thrones prequel begins. This had to happen in an Oliver Stone style, eyes wide shut orgy back room. That's pretty funny. I mean, we can only hope that House of the Dragon is as good as Better Call Saul. Let's hope it is.
Yeah.
Kevin Morales says, Rob, have you played any of the Dark Anthology game series on the PlayStation 5? I have not. I have not played nearly enough games on my PlayStation 5.
Oh my God. Robert, you got to play some games.
I know. I got to play more games. Yash, let me see if I get this right. Yash Strivastava? What a cool name. Yash Strivastava says, American Gods or Sandman? Which one was better? Well, I think American Gods was deeply compromised. If you're talking about the TV shows, I love the first season of American Gods. But Michael Green and Brian Fuller left,
They were great.
and the show kind of went in the toilet. But I think American Gods as a novel was great. But the thing about Sandman is it does so much. It takes you into so many different places. I preferred Sandman, but I liked a novel American Gods quite a bit. Video Hunter D says, it's not Job, but what did you think of Noah from 2014 with Russell Crowe? I like Noah.
Oh my gosh.
I didn't love Noah, but I liked it. It was fine. I'm just like, okay, Russell Crowe's Noah, it was all right. It was cool. RRTNZ says, hail Bob and I'm a big gaming fan, but most of Sandman made me sleepy, except for episode 5, which was gripping psychological horror. Episodes 9 and 10 were a strong ending, mostly due to Fry and Holbrook. Cheers. I disagree, but I guess that's because I knew what I was going to get. I thought it was gripping from the beginning. Sandman being imprisoned and all that. I thought it was really, really, really well done. In episode 4, when he goes to hell and they play the first game, which in the comic, I Am Hope. It's fucking great. I was wondering, how are they going to do that? Because in the original comic, he battles Corazon, the demon that actually has the helmet and the helm, and he doesn't fight Lucifer. But I thought it was a great change that he does fight Lucifer because it sets up their ongoing conflict. Especially, it sets up, when you see Gwendolyn Christie at the end of the 10th episode, and she's fucking pissed.
Yeah, she is.
And she's getting ready. She's plotted because the season of Mist, what she does to Dream is the best. I love what she does to him, and it's or what they do, or what it does to Dream. I think it's great. Wesley Namella says, Rob, you gave me an idea for a movie about people without going on adventures, looking in search of awe and wonder, and leave social media behind. Rob, I'm amazed. Well, that's me. I'm just an idea guy. I'm throwing out the ideas. Here you go. Please go forth, and if that's a good idea, go write that movie. But yes, I mean there is awe and wonder to be had everywhere.
Mhm.
Let's see. David Sock and Lotion. Hello there. I love on the John Campea show you just say David Sock now, but I like that you say David Sock and Lotion for me. Please don't change. I love
Yes.
that.
Sock and lotion. We are putting that sock in the washing machine, and we are not telling anyone.
Nope. I won't
Just
say
going to
anything.
wash-
I
That's
won't
right.
embarrass you. Hey guys, how much do you think Disney will spend on Daredevil? Do you think they're spending too much on shows? I do. Netflix spent $50 million on each season. Well, I think look, they've got Marvel has the money, and Disney wants them to spend the money. I think that while I've enjoyed some of the Disney Plus shows, I think the Disney Plus shows have, for the most part, overall been weaker than they should be.
Mhm.
They I was really disappointed in Moon Knight. I was really looking forward to it, and I loved Oscar Isaac, but where it went, I'm like, wait, what? What? They leaned way too heavily into the schizophrenic nature and all this Egyptian lore. To me, Moon Knight devolved into kind of gobbledygook. And I thought it was very odd that they leaned. So I was hoping, again, like Shang-Chi, I was hoping that they would lean into the early iteration of Moon Knight that I fell in love with, not the very late iteration with all of the Egyptian, the gods. Because it seemed like Moon Knight was a secondary character in his own show. That it was more about Khonshu's machinations and Amet and the gods. Like, what the fuck did that have to do with anything? It was not, yeah. And I thought Hawkeye, like John, I didn't love Hawkeye at all. I mean, I understand they went with the Matt Fraction storyline and the whole tracksuit mafia, but it's like, it just seemed, it was so weird. I mean, I know where they got the story and everything, but it didn't really work for me. That whole show felt really off.
The thing I hated about Hawkeye, and I don't really like to use the word hate very often, but is that they kept him away from his family at a time when he wanted to be with them. And it was very deliberate. And I thought, this is kind of cruel. Like, why are they doing that to him? He's one of the few characters who's showed how important it is for him to have his family and be around his family.
Yeah,
Why
and
do that to him?
Yeah, and I just thought that story it just didn't really work. They didn't make it all work. All these disparate elements where, you're introducing Echo and the tracksuit mafia, and then you had Kate Bishop and her mom and all this stuff. I mean, it didn't translate well at all. And Hawkeye, I'm like, you could have solved this problem in an afternoon. And I'm watching this, over like 6 episodes. Like, why?
Yeah.
Why? Just go deal with what you have to deal with. It would be one night in the day of Hawkeye. You would have taken care of it and been done. So, yeah, I didn't dig it. But in terms of spending money, I mean, they'll spend a lot of money on Daredevil. But look, the thing that I find very interesting about Disney is they're bringing Charlie Cox back as Daredevil, and they've got 3 seasons of Daredevil that are pretty damn good. So they got to live up to those 3 seasons of Daredevil, and I hope that they do. I hope that they can. It'll be really interesting to see what's going to happen, because they have a lot more oversight on these Disney Plus. They're not going to allow. I don't think they're going to allow what they did with the seasons of Daredevil to the MCU Daredevil. But then, if they're doing the Born Again storyline, how can they not? I mean, there's things that happen in that Born Again storyline that you're going to want to see, and they've already touched on some of them in the other Daredevil stuff, so who knows? Matthew Medina says, on Dune, I went with a big group to the Alamo Drafthouse, and half of them said, I wish Star Wars was like this, and this beautiful and poetic, but that Paul didn't have emotionality that Luke did, and that was fair. Well, I think that's absolutely true. I mean, look, I think that Star Wars, to me, Star Wars is 2 movies and that's it. I love Star Wars. Star Wars changed my life. Empire Strikes Back continued that. Everything else has been a disappointment in some way, shape, or form. I know a lot of people are like, what? But, Lael's perhaps it's best he's not here. because he would be pissed. But no,
Well,
go
Return
ahead.
of the Jedi is always going to be one of my favorites because it was one of the first. It was the first Star Wars film that I ever saw in the movie
I know,
theater.
that's fair.
And I went with my cousin. We went. I wasn't with adults, let's say, so it was the first time I've even gone to the movies, let's say, without my parents. So this was a big deal for me, and it was a double feature with the Emerald Forest. So I had to watch the Emerald Forest first, and then see Return of the Jedi. So it was significant for me. I'm not ever going to forget that. So yeah, there is that.
No, I mean, and a lot of people saw it. I mean, to me, Jedi came out when I turned 16, and it was the most disappointing movie I've ever seen in my entire life. And I only say that, and I don't mean to make that. A lot of people saw Jedi in the theater for the first time, and they loved it. But for me, Star Wars and Empire were such triumphs of imagination. Nothing had been seen like that. And in my mind, after Empire Strikes Back, what they were setting up was I wanted to see a truly Lawrence of Arabia-sized epic. And you got a pretty cool rescue of Han Solo, and then you had this great battle at the end and Luke confronting the Emperor. And everything else, it was like, why is this in this? Why are we watching this? Like, who cares? Like, what's going on? Why are we watching this speeder bike chase? It's just a speeder bike chase. It had nothing to do with anything. You know, when even though it's cool, it was cool, you know, but it just seemed like, I mean, I could go on and on and on and on, but Star Wars and Empire were amazing, two of the finest examples of fantasy filmmaking ever. And Star Wars was, no one had ever seen anything like it before. It was so groundbreaking. It's hard to explain to people how groundbreaking it was. And to a young movie fan like myself, it was every dream I never even knew I had or wanted to have made flesh. It was unbelievable. And you know, when you get to Jedi, it's like there's another Death Star.
Yeah, I didn't like that.
There's Ewoks. I mean, it was just ridiculous. I mean, you've set up this incredible battle, this battle between good and evil. I wanted to see I wanted to see Coruscant, and they should have attacked Coruscant or something and retaken the Jedi Temple, and that's where the battle, I mean, when you get another Death Star, they already blew one up. So by seeing another Death Star, it's like, that one wasn't even finished. It's like, let's take that shit out easy. And they did. So it was just like, whatever. I mean, the great thing about that movie is the battle between the Emperor, Vader, and Luke. That's right. Incredible. It's one of my favorite things in all of Star Wars, but it's surrounded by gobbledygook as well. Like, who cares? And if it was, imagine if that took place in the desecrated Jedi Temple that was Palpatine's headquarters. That's when you should have seen Coruscant, you know, and they had to assault a planet. Not the Death Star, but they had to go to the seat of power of the Empire and take it out, you know, right. and that's what I expected to see, and I expected to see Leia turn, like Leia go to the dark side, and Han would have to kill her, you know. I wanted to see epic Shakespearean hugeness and all that, and maybe that's, you know, my own expectation, but that's what you were set up to believe. And when I went and saw Jedi, I was really, if you look at that movie, the scope of it is actually very, very small. Whereas, you know, in Empire, you see Hoth, you see Dagobah, you see Bespin, you see the giant superstar destroyer. You know, there's all these different, they go places that you've never seen before. And you see these incredible battles with these machines that you've never seen before. And it's amazing. And what do you do in Jedi? You go back to fucking Tatooine? If there's a bright center of the universe, you're on the planet that it's furthest from, why are we going back here? Why does Jabba the Hutt live on Tatooine? Like, why? Because he puts on a pod race? It seemed like they could have gone anywhere. Why doesn't Jabba the Hutt, why didn't they give us a new planet? Why didn't Jabba the Hutt live in someplace?
On his home planet.
Why would a slug live in a desert?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it seemed, and when you watch that movie, none of the design, the Gamorrean guards, it was just, it wasn't good. Anyway, I don't mean to bag on Return of the Jedi. People are going to hate me now. 6 Scale Mafia, how are you? I've got faith of the heart. No one's going to bend or break me. Remember, put me down for an archer. Put me down for an archer, Anthony.
Yes.
And I will get you some cash shortly. Alan Ling says, so hearing your thoughts about the MCU right now, are you disappointed with its current state? Phase 4 is all over the place. I agree, but I do still love the MCU. Is the MCU Marvel series in danger? Listen, to be clear, I love the MCU too. I look forward to every one of these movies. But to me, Love and Thunder was the first time that I felt that Marvel and the filmmaker they hired were not simpatico. They gave too much of it to Academy Award winner Taika Waititi, and he ran away with the humor of it all, and I think it really destroyed the character of Thor, and the Gore the God Butcher. I mean, it was dealing with some really heady emotional issues, really heavy stuff, and they turned it into a fucking joke. And I didn't, it went way too far in the wrong direction. It was totally unbalanced. And I didn't enjoy it. And I think that was indicative of they've got to, and the whole idea of the multiverse is undercutting the Marvel universe itself because it makes the stakes, we watch these movies going, it's the multiverse. It doesn't really matter. They can go pull. So Reed Richards dies. So Captain Marvel dies. So Professor X dies. You bring Patrick Stewart back to play Professor X and you just kill him.
For about 5 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, and when you do that, it diminishes what should have been. I mean, that should have been, all those characters should have teamed up to defeat Scarlet Witch, and that should have been a battle that lasted until the end of the movie. And they should have tied it into what was going on with Loki and the end of it's just, I watch, I'm like, I don't care. Don't care.
Or Scarlet Witch could have won in this film, and then they could come back in the second film and defeat her or something like that. Yeah. It ultimately was a trifle. It didn't matter. I mean, when Stephen Strange comes back, nobody's the wiser. Wong does. He knows, but nobody else knows. It has no consequences. Wanda, it bummed me out. I don't think they're in danger because they're still making money. You know what I mean? I mean, it's like, let's see. Let's see Now,
where
Thor: Love and Thunder is.
Yeah, we'll see where Thor: Love and Thunder is, because wait a minute. Oh, I misspelled. I put two more F's. What's really interesting is that these movies, they have a long reach. They play for a long. They have lots of ancillary markets and things. Okay, so. Wow. So Dragon Ball Superheroes, the #1 movie of the weekend, it looks like, which is crazy. So Thor: Love and Thunder has made worldwide $724 million, which means it's done very well. So even if it was expensive. So these Marvel movies, even on $200 million spends, are still making a lot of money. And again, it's outgrossed. Domestically, it made $329 million, and internationally, it made $395 million. So it's a hit. Here's the thing: from a business standpoint, the Marvel movies are still making lots of money, and a lot of people forget that they are, but they are indeed. Matthew Medina says Neil Gaiman needs to write Eternals too. Oh my God, and let Zhao be Zhao. That naturalistic cinematography needs to have that verisimilitude that Villeneuve has. I agree. I would love that. I would love that. Amazing. It would be great. I think that would be awesome. But I don't know. I'd love to see Neil Gaiman write Eternals too. That would be fantastic. Mikey Lito says Shuri's dead. Cue Curtis Mayfield. Let's all remember Curtis Mayfield, I believe, did the score and the music for Superfly, which celebrated its 50th anniversary last week. So good on that. Shuri's dead, probably. I guess. I don't know. I hope not. But at least I have my Shuri Hot Toys figure, so that's good. Emil Johansson says, do you know or recommend any other Neil Gaiman books? Well, if you haven't read American Gods, it's a great book. I would say check that out. I liked it. And Good Omens that he wrote with Terry Pratchett. If you haven't seen the show, read the book because the book is great. David Sock and Lotion said, there's somebody else named Sock. It's not me. Oh, good. Ooh. Then I'm glad that you stay who you are. That you don't change your identity for anybody. That's good.
That's right.
Fredo Valcoz is here. Fredo, love you, Rob. I'm drunk and high, and I just finished watching UFC, and I'm really happy because it was great. Well, Fredo, to know that you love me and that you're drunk and high and you're very happy because of UFC, I love you, man. I am glad to see you that happy, because who doesn't want to be that happy? Grendel Prime 1 said, thoughts on Matt Wagner's Grendel, Netflix soon. I fucking love Grendel. I would love to see Devil by the Deed turned into a movie, and then all the different Grendel, Christine, all the different Grendels, Grendel Prime, just like you have there, Grendel versus Batman, whatever. I would love to see Grendel. For those of you who don't know, Matt Wagner's Grendel series is absolutely incredible. I can't recommend it highly enough. Somebody's got to do a Grendel omnibus, though. I'd love to do it. Is there a Grendel omnibus? I got to look into that. Josh Weilbecker. I think it's Weilbecker. There were tons of consequences from Doctor Strange 2, just like there were tons of consequences from Age of Ultron that only came to bear in the next phase. Yeah, I'm sure there are, but you don't feel it when you're watching. Like Age of Ultron with the Sokovia Accords and what happened with Quicksilver and Wanda, you do, but I just felt that when it was over, it was kind of, I don't know what it was. I just felt the plot was lackluster. What do you think?
I liked Age of Ultron.
I did too. I love Age of Ultron is great. I love Age of Ultron. But I mean with Doctor Strange. How did you feel about it?
Doctor Strange 2.
Yes, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness.
Yeah, they made two mistakes for me. The two mistakes were that Wanda didn't win. She should have won and been able to take America Chavez away. The second thing was that Doctor Strange felt like he was pushed aside. So, I think that backstory with the being at the wedding, nobody wants to see that. Nobody wanted to see that. He needed to move on. This should have been the second part of his life, not him sort of, hashing out stuff that didn't work out. Let's see him in a more positive light where he's doing something else and it's important. And he's now taking the helm where the other superheroes, let's say, can't. And he's got that power, and that's what he's concerned with, not because he messed up, because of the one that got away. Like, give me a break. This man can be with someone else in the future. So, to hold on to somebody who doesn't want you, it's kind of self-defeating, right? Isn't it?
I totally agree with you. And I also think, Doctor Strange, here's what I also find disappointing about the state of the MCU now. So Doctor Strange saw that there was only one course of action in Infinity War. Yes. He saw millions of, and he took that course of action, and he was a victim of the snap.
Yes.
You could have told the story when he comes back, and you see the state of the Avengers. I mean, Black Widow is dead. Tony Stark is dead. Captain America is dead. Or not, he went back in time, he's not there anymore. It would have been really interesting to see more of a character study of the ramifications for Stephen Strange himself, yes. Knowing how the universe has changed. And when you say Multiverse of Madness, I understand how he had to go after Wanda and all that, but it just seemed like there was a much more interesting story that could have been told about the fact that if Doctor Strange could see all of these different courses of action, he would be the one person that knows what's happening in the multiverse, because he saw 5 or a million different things. And you could have told a much more interesting, more Doctor Strange-centric story that by coming back from the snap, suddenly he understands the multiverse is unraveling and there's going to be another multiverse war. He might be the only person who knows, and he has to take action and go do something about it, as opposed to just having this big bad like Wanda. It felt like the story was kind of, again, it felt like a very inconsequential story, even though Wanda's going and looking for her kids in the multiverse. It's like, who cares? What does that have to do with anything? Go find your kids. So go ahead, kill the Wanda that has kids and take them. What do I care? Like, why is that a big deal? Because you're running rampant through the multiverse? Like, I know I'm kind of being glib, but who really cares about that story? And it's a story that they set up that it seemed like, okay, this is not a story that was about Doctor Strange. It just happened to him. And it's like, well, I guess I better go save the world because I have to, because Wanda's gone around the bend crazy. And it didn't feel like a story. When you're telling a story about a character, it should be about that character. And I didn't feel that this story was about him. You know, it starts out with Defender Strange. It's not even our Doctor Strange that's with America Chavez.
Right.
And it was like, oh, okay, I guess I'll care about this. You know, it's fine. But it was the first time I felt like I'm just watching plot. And Doctor Strange is caught up in this plot, but it's not a story even about him. It's like a story that he walked into and has to, I guess I have to go help everybody.
No, it's very similar to the role he played in Spider-Man, where
Right.
you know he kind of was that secondary character that was needed. You needed him to do something, but it wasn't, the whole focus was not on him. It was on Spider-Man. So you could understand why he wasn't the most central character there. But you know, to name it, to give the film his name, and to make it seem like it's the second part of his life when he hasn't gotten past the first one. He's still pining over the same. He wouldn't be at that point. He just
No,
wouldn't.
especially after confronting. I mean, the man was a surgeon, and now he's gone to an alien planet and confronted Thanos. I mean, and this is the thing that I think that the Marvel Cinematic Universe is not dealing with at all. When I say the cosmology of it all, you have these ordinary people that have now become superheroes, and they're dealing with this craziness. I mean, Doctor Strange is fighting Dormammu, and he's not a surgeon anymore. But then when the world is snapped away, and so would you be haunted after you knew you'd gone into non-existence for 5 years and you come back? Did Stephen Strange know? Like he said, well, this is the only thing that happened. So he knew then when he disintegrated that he was going to come back. Did he know that for a fact? And if he knew that for a fact, that affected he knew that these characters were going to lose their lives and die or whatever. And we've seen people kind of adjust, but we now have seen people come back from the Thanos snap. You've seen the Celestials visit Earth. Earth has been attacked by aliens. The Celestial came out of the ocean. Where are we now? Like, I feel that part of the problem is that the MCU worked because it still felt grounded in our world. And what was fun was seeing there was all these peripheral characters. Like in Iron Man 1, there's no superpowered beings. Everybody's just a person. You've got terrorist groups. You've got Obadiah Stane, who runs Stark Industries. You got Pepper Potts. You got Happy. You got Rhodey. They're just people. You know, they're just normal. So it was grounded in the human world. Now there's no humans anymore. Like Doctor Strange goes and sees the same. I had the same problem, and I think the same problem was true of the Matrix. In the first Matrix, Thomas Anderson is just a guy working at a fucking. He's a data entry person. Then he's selling bootleg programs to people. He's living in the real world, and then he gets caught up in the Matrix. And the problem with the Matrix sequels is they completely jettison the real world. I mean, the real world, quote unquote. The whole point was, how do you liberate all the human souls from the Matrix? How do you cause, through religion or whatever, how do you get people all of that fell by the wayside. So what was so cool about the Matrix is that you have a character that's just a normal dude, and everybody watching that movie asks themselves, what if I was him? Mm-hmm. You know, what if I found out that we lived in the Matrix? What would that be like? And that's, everybody's thinking that. And when you get to the sequels, it's all gobbledygook. It's all just noise about, well, there's the human world, and then there's the machine world, and there's Zion, it's the last human city. And you're like, what the fuck does this have to do with the story that you told me in the Matrix? I know you've given it all to me, and there's all these characters and all this stuff, and let's fight the Sentinels and whatever. Who gives a fuck? And that's why those movies...
Something they did that was strange in the last Matrix film, Robert, was that interaction between Keanu and Carrie-Anne Moss was awkward.
Yeah.
You know, like that was weird. Like it should have felt more natural and more synchronized, where she's with her family and he's kind of like neither here nor there. How is this supposed to be a reuniting? It didn't make any sense. You know, she has a family now, and that's going to be pushed aside. Doesn't matter because Keanu shows up. Like that doesn't happen. She's not going to do that. So, you know, some of these things were not well thought out. And also the scene where they're together at the end, where they're kind of like floating around, just looks so artificial.
Yeah, and I mean they brought in all these things, and it's like, okay, but again, what does it all mean from a storytelling point of view? And it just, again, and I feel that we're kind of that way. Like when you're watching, I said this about Loki. When you're watching Loki is pushing the boundaries of believability and the universe. It's so far out there. Like it's Loki, the TV series, is about as far away from Iron Man 1 as you can get.
Yeah.
And to me, I'm watching Loki going, there's no, we are completely untethered from the real world right now. With the time variance authority and all this stuff, there is nothing to do with the real world. And I'm like, that's a problem. Because the Marvel Cinematic Universe works because we as the audience are like those superheroes. It's only this far away from our own reality. And that's why it all worked. You know, when you see Hawkeye's family snapped, I mean, think about that. Hawkeye's family stood in for it was a proxy scene for the entire world. Every family across the globe, everybody understood that scene. When he turns around and his family's gone, that's all they needed to tell you. And the horror of that was that every audience member who was watching Endgame understood that could have been my family.
Yes.
And it immediately grounded you in where we were and why that movie worked and why the MCU worked. The problem with Phase 4 is it's been completely removed from humanity. Even Shang-Chi. I think the reason I like Shang-Chi is like, oh, we're in San Francisco. You know, I'm watching an action scene on a bus with bad guys, you know, and it's a human scene. And the rest of the movie, once you get to China and suddenly, oh, we're walking into the spirit realm and it was all cool and everything, but it's so far removed from the beginning of Shang-Chi. In a way, Shang-Chi is a great metaphor for the MCU. And what's fun is an action scene on a bus careening down a hill in San Francisco. We get that because we understand what it would be like to be on that bus, you know, and to watch that fight. Just like we would understand what Tony Stark, he walks out in his homemade iron suit and uses a flamethrower. We totally get that. But that's what the problem with the Marvel Cinematic Universe is. When I'm watching Thor: Love and Thunder, I'm like, none of this is real. All of these human emotions that actually could be really, really grounded. It's like, nope, here, kids, have the power of Thor. You know, and you watch this and none of it matters. None of it is grounded in reality. So nobody cares anymore.
I thought when he gave them the power of Thor that they were going to use that power to protect themselves. I didn't think that they were going to use that power to kill anyone.
Yeah, like suddenly, yeah.
That surprised me. I thought they're going to be able to protect themselves against evil. It's going to be a shield. They can make a human shield or something. No.
Yep. Okay, we're going to wrap this stream up because I have to get up very early and go to an event. There's 2 more super chats. Brian Osborne says, read the Kenobi or read Kenobi on your recommendation. It was much more satisfying than the Disney Plus series. You mean the novel? Yes. Not perfect, but it was actually centered around Obi-Wan Kenobi and separate from Luke, Leia, Vader. Yeah, that's when he goes. Yeah, it is. It's a. I mean, why couldn't you tell an Obi-Wan Kenobi story that had nothing to do with anybody we'd met before? It was that Kenobi novel does just that. It basically tells a samurai story, and it's really interesting. And I don't, again, they make the universe so small. That's why I'm looking so forward to Andor. I hope it's great.
Yes,
I'm glad you read the book. Mark Spector's Avatar. Rob, at the end of the first Matrix, Neo can supposedly make changes as he sees fit and free everyone. Movies 2 and 3, and he doesn't change anything. Yeah, I know. I think it's a real. Now, I don't know if he could change everything in the Matrix. I think what he had, now that his mind was free, he had to figure out a way to free everybody else that was stuck in the Matrix using his powers or whatever. But he doesn't, like you said, he doesn't do that. They go a different way. John Weilbecker says, you guys are being generous. It is if a franchise has both grounded stories and broader stories, that makes for more storytelling possibilities. Not every film can be Iron Man 1. That's too narrow. Well, you miss my point. It's not that every film has to be Iron Man 1, but even Endgame is you get to Endgame and it opens with a very grounded moment where one of the Avengers loses his entire family to the snap of Thanos. And that's crazy, insane science fiction storytelling, but it's grounded in the reality of what it would be like for all of us can then put ourselves in Hawkeye's place. That opening was so great because all of us that are watching the movie are thinking, if that really happened and I watched my family disappear in front of me, how would I feel? And then it cuts into the Mr. Fantasy music, and you see the Marvel logo. Every person watching, it's a giant epic superhero film. We just seen Thanos snap his fingers. We saw a battle in Wakanda at the end of Infinity War, and this movie opens at a picnic where a man is teaching his daughter to fire arrows and his wife's cooking hot dogs for his sons. That's what I'm talking about. That the Marvel Cinematic Universe the fact that they opened that movie that way was perfect because we, the audience, are put in the position that Hawkeye is, and it makes us realize what would the world be like after Thanos is snapped, not for the superheroes, but for us, the viewers. And that is brilliant storytelling. That's brilliant science fiction storytelling, and that is what is missing. And that's why I like the beginning of Shang-Chi. I'm Shang-Chi. My best friend's Awkwafina. I've got this job. I'm making enough money that I can go karaoke and get hammered with my best friend every night. And everybody's there. And by the time you get to the end of the movie, it's completely untethered from the reality. Like, I loved Simu Liu as Shang-Chi. He was great, but it was great because he was so grounded. And that movie, as much as I did like Shang-Chi, but by the time you get to the end of the movie, you're in fantasy land. You've left the MCU and you're existing in a wuxia movie that might have been made in 1983 China. And it's like, what does this mean to the greater good, or what does this mean to the rest of what's going on? I would much rather have seen an ongoing crime story, like I said, rather than lean into the wuxia thing. Go Tony Leung as a crime boss and make it a triad movie and have it be like hard boiled, where Shang-Chi's fighting. It's one shot that lasts for 45 minutes or something. Morgan Holmes says the clock is ticking to return to Game of Thrones. Fire will rain and all will bend the knee. I hope so. What do you think? Do you have high hopes? We haven't even talked about Andor or Star Wars or anything.
It's starting today, right?
Yep.
It starts on the 20. I have high hopes for it, even though that article seemed to indicate that they wanted to place what it was supposed to mean to us. I hope this isn't a series that will mean something different than what they're trying to give us the impression that it's supposed to mean. I hope it has a valid story and it's entertaining and fun to watch. So I do have hopes for it.
That's all we can ask for. Yeah, I hope so. But look, I want to end this by saying I still have hope. I still really enjoy the MCU movies. I get excited for them. I'm really excited for Wakanda Forever. I'm just worried it has a lot of heavy lifting to do. I think it's a pivotal moment in the future of the MCU where it's going to go. I think coming off of a $1 billion movie that also was nominated for an Oscar and won Oscars, and with the loss of Chad Boseman, it means a lot of things to a lot of people. But from a filmmaking perspective and an MCU perspective, I think that Wakanda Forever has a lot that it needs to do, and I think it really has the potential to put the MCU back on track. But it's got a lot to answer for. Like, what do the Wakandans think of the Celestials? They're the most technologically advanced civilization on Earth. They must have some thoughts. After the Thanos snap, I mean, if I were the Wakandans, I'd be like, we can't let this happen again. Tony Stark was right. We have to put an armor around the world. We got Celestials. I got Atlanteans coming out of my ass. There's a lot going on here. And we got Egyptian gods fighting over the Great Pyramids, eating people's souls in Cairo. And that's just up the road from us. What the fuck's going on? I would think the Wakandans would be in a state of flux and be like, maybe we should take over the world. Why not? And after the blip, in the middle of the blip, how did Wakanda feel? I hope that scene where our favorite queen is I've lost my family, and is during the blip. I mean, because they've opened embassies, they've just revealed themselves to the world, and Thanos snaps everything away. I mean, there's a lot going on there. Hopefully, we'll see. Hopefully, it's a great story, and I look, I can't wait. So, John Weilbecker says, still disagree, Rob, but one last bit of support. Well, that's very kind of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, I think we'll end this stream for you. It's 3:15. I have to go, but this is another great stream. Now, where can people find you, and what do you have going on?
Yes, guys, you can find me on my YouTube channel, Positive Fandom. I stream on YouTube and on Twitch and on Odyssey. And tomorrow morning, you can find me on Positive Fandom for my Sunday brunch show, where I'm going to do all the parlay in the fandom. If you're a creator, please come to the show. We put your links in the chat. We promote other creators. So you can definitely find me there. I don't know how much streaming I'm going to get done next week, but I certainly will be back here to stream with you, Robert, next week for sure.
And I'm sure Lael will be here. And Morgan Holmes, I got to tell you, I'm very excited for House of the Dragon. I think it looks really good. From what I know of the story, it sounds really good. You know, George R. R. Martin's involved. And I get excited for something until something lets me down. So, like you, and I want to thank you for the support, and the clock is ticking, and I hope it's great. Somebody just sent in, so Adama Rijay says, I don't know if I can, very drunk, recently rewatched Game of Thrones, Amelia as Daenerys, humana, what a woman. My wife getting ditched if Amelia ever wanted me. Good night, guys. Well, Adama, if that is not the perfect super chat to end on, I don't know what is. Hamana, what a woman. You know what, though, Adama? Something tells me your wife's got to be pretty special, too. So,
Yes.
you know, again, find that awe and wonder. I'm going to go. I want to say thank you to everyone who supports this channel. Through
Tom Junior Jackson, thank you tonight as well.
Yep, and Tom for moderating, and I think Brian was here as well. I want to thank you guys for being great moderators, and I want to thank Tom Junior Jackson for being a goof person and for being the goof emeritus of this channel. So it's emeritus, goof emeritus, not emeritus. It's goof emeritus. So I keep saying, I don't know why I say emeritus. What am I trying to sound stupid? I guess so. Goof emeritus. You're the goof emeritus, sir. So there you go. And always a pleasure. Tell your mom, kiss your mom goodnight for me. And
I will. Thank you, Robert.
all right, I will see you later.
Bye.
And everyone else, I'll see you later. And yeah. So again, you know, we got House of the Dragon starting. We've got She-Hulk episode 2 coming, as I'd say. And I again, if I cannot, I can reiterate the fact that there is awe and wonder all around you. But you have to choose to be open to it. And I would say this, I challenge all of you. Next weekend, make an adventure for yourselves. Find a place you've never been within 2 hours. Get up early Saturday morning or Sunday morning. Take a friend, not Sunday morning, because you don't want to miss House of the Dragon if you do. But take a friend with you. Have an adventure. Go somewhere you've never been. And take pictures and video. And send it to me, and we'll we'll play it on in 2 weeks. We'll play it on the show. We'll play whatever you choose to send me, and I'll just play it on Midnight Musings, and we'll see where people went. And again, there's no rules to this. Just pick somewhere within 2 hours. I say 2 hours. You can do it an hour or 3 hours, wherever you want to go. But the whole point would be go somewhere you've never been, a town, a place. Do a little research on it before you go. Find out maybe it's a historical place or look up its history. And when you go there, meet some people that live there and ask them what it's like to live there. And tell them that if you're bashful and shy and you don't like to go up to perfect strangers, then you can blame me. Say that there's this YouTube channel, the Post-Geek Singularity, and we're doing a challenge. don't say challenge, because it doesn't want to belittle what you're doing. It's not a challenge. It's just a fun thing, and it's an adventure for you. And turn it into something. You know what? I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm just offering, or you guys go have an adventure. You report back to me, and you make it. You find the awe and wonder in the mundane. That's the task at hand. If you choose to accept it, is it a mission impossible? Don't know, but I want to see what you guys do. Send me pictures. Send me video. You can send all this to me at postgeeksingularity.com. Go to the website. It shows you how you can contact us. If you've got a video and you need to send it to me, I'll send you a link where I can get it from you. But, yeah, it should be fun. I mean, and by the way, you know who's going to have more fun than anybody? You are. You're going to have fun because you guys are going to go do something and go somewhere that you've never been. And you know what's going to be the most interesting thing about it? You'll think to yourselves, wow, this has been within my driving reach. I've been able to go out there because it's less than 2 hours to get there. And I had an adventure literally in my own backyard. You know, it's not like the movie Explorers where you built the Thunder Road and fly off into space and meet aliens. Or maybe that'll happen. I mean, I don't know. Could. You never know what's going to happen. But, hey. And on that note, everyone, who knows what's going to happen with Game of Thrones? Hopefully it's good. Mark Spector's Avatar fires one last super chat in. Rob, your show brings actual joy to my days. Well, because you bring up Mark Spector. I mean, look, I might not have loved the Moon Knight series, but you know what? I do love Swag Props, Moon Knight props that he made, because this is badass. And I got to move it and like put it somewhere off my desk, but I can't stop playing with it. So, and I guess if you can't stop playing with things, it might as well be toys rather than something else, right? Although, let's face it, we can't stop playing with that either. So, I mean, I'm an old man and I still can't stop. Won't stop. Anyway, on that note, everyone, remember, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear. And if you choose to accept this adventure challenge, you can hear stories that you haven't heard before. All you have to do is listen and ask questions. Remember, when you go to these places, part of the task is to ask questions of people. You know, if somebody asks you a question about yourself, answer it. But for the most part, compliment them, ask them, find out what's going on. Find out as much as you can. Do what V'ger in Star Trek: The Motion Picture did, which you can go see in certain theaters now tomorrow. Learn all that is learnable. That's what you guys are. You're V'ger. You got to report back to me. Learn all that is learnable and bring me your knowledge. Bring me your knowledge. Bring it back to me. I want to hear it. I want you all to go out and have an adventure. And tell them Rob Burnett sent you. I don't know what that means, but hey, I want you to do it. And so there we go. Thank you all for being imagination connoisseurs. I love doing the show, Midnight Musings. I'm sorry Lael wasn't here, but Lael was at a wedding. And if you look at his Facebook page, him and LaToya, man, did they look good. They look good. They are one handsome couple. And Lael, I'm sure, will be back when he can be. And on that note, I will see you all. There was no Let's Get Physical Media tomorrow. But I will see you all on the John Campea shows all next week. And there will be, there's a really interesting Robservations I'm doing Monday night with Ruben Pla, P-L-A. Ruben Pla is an actor, and he is a filmmaker, and he made a documentary film about all the horror filmmakers that live in L.A. called The Horror Crowd that's been burning up the festival circuit. It's going to be available on iTunes. He is going to be on Robservations on Monday night, probably around 6 p.m. And if you can, The Horror Crowd's really interesting. It's got a lot of your favorite horror stars and filmmakers. I believe it's going to drop on iTunes, and what I want to do is let's get it up there. All of you watch it, go out and watch it, check it out. And on that note, I would say to all of you, have a better night.